So my name is David Murphy. I work for Air and Innovation. I'm one of 3 partners in a consortium with Cogea, led by Cogea in Italy and Poseidon in the UK Ireland. And we are supporting on a Synergies contract, looking at synergies and clustering around EMFF projects. And my job today is to chair the meeting and try and take you through a quite intensive agenda and keep us on time. We've tried to design an agenda that's quite stimulating and interactive, and we're going to leave a lot of time for discussion and breakouts. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go straight into it. It'd be great if you can just mute your microphones when you're not talking. It'd be great if you are willing and if you have the bandwidth on your broadband to share your camera so that the speakers have an audience. It's always difficult in these remote workshops if we can't see people face to face. If you have any questions as we go along for the speakers, if you could use the chat function it's on the bottom tab of your Zoom. And then what I would do is when we finish each speaker, if we have time, I'll then invite the people who've posed questions in the chat to ask them directly to the speakers. Like I said, the idea is that the format is to be a true workshop. So the idea is that the presentations are to stimulate, to set the scene. And then the idea is really to co-create knowledge and discussions and brainstorming through the breakouts. And like I said, we have 2 good breakout sessions across session B and session C. If you have any technical problems over the course of this morning, some of my colleagues are on hand. You'll see their signatures, Air and Innovation, and they're more than willing to help you. So you can send them a direct message in the chat, or send them an email to Sarah, who's been corresponding with you in the preparation of this event. I am going to be pretty tough on the speakers. We do have a lot to get through, and like I said, I want to leave a lot of time for a discussion. So I will give the speakers a 2-minute warning by raising my hand in the function, and about 30 seconds I'll warn them, and then, like I said, we'll try and keep to schedule because, like I said, we do have quite a lot to get through. So that's it. So like I said, that's just the housekeeping. If you have any questions, by all means, send me a message in chat. So to kick off, I'm going to ask Charlotte Jago, who's a senior project advisor in Unit D3 of Synergies, to maybe just set the scene in terms of the this contract, but also the EMFF cohort that we're talking about related to this initiative. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. I will share my screen. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for the introduction, David. It's a great pleasure to have you all today with us at this workshop. It is a workshop exclusively on maritime projects from various EU funds. I mean, mainly we have here today EMFF beneficiaries, but we also have beneficiaries from other funding schemes. And we have also the great pleasures to have many representatives from European Commission services and executive agencies that implement other EU funds which have a link with maritime projects. And that is not so usual that we organize such a workshop, and we really want to take the opportunity to exchange, to discuss, to build understanding across some topics such as integration, scaling up, and cooperation between EU funding instruments, and how can we improve synergies. So as David said, I'm Charlotte Jago. I'm working in Synergies. Synergies is the agency that was set up in April 2021 to implement a number of EU programs to deliver the EU Green Deal. So it is the agency about climate, infrastructures, and environment. It manages programs such as CEF, Connecting Europe Facility, parts of Horizon Europe, such as climate action, transport, energy. It manages also the Innovation Fund, the LIFE program, which is the environment program of the European Union, and also obviously the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, which is the program under which this workshop is organized. So just before going back to the workshop, just to tell you a bit more about the EMFF. The EMFF, the European Maritime Fisheries Fund, is a fund, as you can see here, that is mainly managed at the level of EU member states. Most of it You see here under the period 2014-2020, it's 89% that was managed at the level of member states, and a small part, 11% under the period 2014-2020, was managed directly by the European Commission and by executive agencies. And this is this part that we're looking at today. So all the projects that we will talk about today under the EMFF are funded under this very small part that you can see here in orange. This fund supports the EU Common Fisheries Policy, but also the EU Maritime Policy, and such very important policy activities such as the Directive on Maritime Special Planning, but also actions on maritime surveillance and also international ocean governance. So we are talking today about projects that are managed by the executive agency of SINEA. And you see here on this slide, the activities, the main areas that we have in our portfolio. We have funded under 2014-2020 about 300 operations for 270 million euros. The activities are funded through calls for proposals and call for tenders. A number of activities relate to the common fisheries policy, so that is studies to support the implementation of the CFP, and that is scientific advice, mainly studies. There are a number of activities regarding support to policies, such as the Maritime Special Planning Directive, as I mentioned, but also sea basin cooperation. And there are a number of activities that we are funding with EMFF regarding these aspects, such as sea basin assistance mechanisms for the Atlantic or the Western Mediterranean. But today, what is the most interesting for us, it's the projects that are funded under the Blue Economy, Blue Careers, and Blue Labs. And this is what we call the Blue Economy projects under EMFF. So what we are looking at in the framework of this workshop, and the EMFF beneficiaries that are participating to this workshop are part of this cohort. So we're looking at 96 projects for about 90 million EU contributions. And those projects are arising from 35 countries, and they involve 346 organizations. So here I give a bit more details on the EMFF portfolio that you can see here. So you see the amounts and the number of projects that I have just mentioned, and you see a bit the distribution across the main calls and topics that we've been funding. And you see here there is a quite important number of projects, 48 projects related to blue technology, blue economy, blue investment. And these projects also relate a lot with such programs as Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, the EIC, for example. And basically, the fact that we have so many projects in that area dates back to a communication that was published by the Commission in 2014 about innovation in the blue economy, and also a number of studies that were launched a bit later about investment and finance in the blue economy. And with those communications and the results of these studies indicated that there was a need to increase investment and support to SMEs in the blue economy. So as of 2016, calls were more directed towards SMEs, towards investment, innovation. And that's why we have a big cohort of projects here, 48 under this category. But another important cohort of projects under EMFF, it's the Blue Careers project, where we have 15 projects here. Also designed to bridge the gap, the skills gap in the maritime economy. So between the skills available and the labor needs. And you see also below important areas where projects have been funded, such as sustainable tourism, nautical routes, for example, and that also relates to the COSME program. of the European Union. We've also been funding projects related to marine environment, marine litter, and there have been also strong links with the LIFE program, for example, here. And also we have a good number of projects related to Blue Labs. The idea was to bring ideas from the lab to the business, to the market with concrete products. And we have a number of projects and beneficiaries from these projects today with us. So just to give you an idea, what does an EMFF project look like? So here I've just given you examples of 3 calls for proposals that we've launched several times under 2014-2020. Just to give you an idea a bit how they look like, the projects. So the Blue Careers project, as I just briefly explained, we're looking at the skills gap in the maritime economy, and they needed to have education and industry in the partnership. And you see the range of the budget here. And the calls were launched in 2016 and 2018. Then you see the Blue Labs project. You see here the example of Fish for Fish, and we have Rebecca with us today. So thank you for joining, Rebecca. And the idea was indeed, as I explained before, to bring ideas from research to the market. And here you can see that we had research, but also we needed to have SMEs in the consortia. And the range of the budget between the first call in 2016 and the second call in 2018 has increased quite a lot, as you can see. And the last example that I wanted to give was the call of the Blue Economy Window call, where you see here they are addressed at SMEs only. And the idea here was to fund innovative SMEs and help them access to the market. So here you didn't need to have a consortium. It could be only SMEs, and you see here that the budget they could require was quite substantial compared to previous type of projects. And so you can see also the shift of investment and the greater effort put on SMEs in the blue economy with this type of calls, which were the most recent calls. On the next slide, you can see here a bit this shift, this pattern that I've just mentioned. You can see on the right-hand side keywords that have been used in the abstract title of the project in the early years of the program. And on the left side, you can see the keywords that have been used in the later part of the program. And you can see that there has been a shift between training, networks, skills towards more investment and innovation language like technology, solution, product, cost, etc. So that shows you a bit the shift that there has been in the program. On this slide, it's a bit the same idea. You see 3 clusters emerging from the cohort of projects. So you see on the right-hand side, the cluster clear on skills. On the left-hand side, the cluster more on investment, blue technology, blue economy, and you see a cluster emerging at the bottom in the center about digitalization and data. What is interesting is also that at the end of the project, there were new keywords coming in, like CO2 emission or microalgae, that also showed the shift also of the call for proposals, notably in 2020 to clearly address the Green Deal. About the workshop now, so I mean, David gave you some information in the beginning. So it is a workshop that is organized in the framework of the EMFF. This contract on synergies and clustering between maritime projects under which we organize this workshop has several dimensions. One dimension is about evaluation of the impact of the EMFF funding on those projects that I've just mentioned to you. There is a dimension about clustering, putting projects together, giving them more visibility, and an aspect about networking activities. And in fact, this workshop is really at the crossroads of all those aspects, because what we want to do here is we want to discuss how does the EMFF fit in the EU funding landscape? How does it position itself? What's the added value? What's the coherence of this fund and of the interventions with other EU programs? And that's why we also have so many representatives from other programs with us today. So in this way, this workshop also participates to the evaluation a bit dimension of this contract. Regarding the clustering, well, it's quite clear. We have many beneficiaries from EMFF and also beneficiaries from other EU programs. So this workshop also contribute to clustering of maritime projects, and obviously networking, because we're here to discuss, to exchange, and to build understanding of what integration, what scaling up here, and what is cooperation, what does it mean, and how to improve synergies. We will see in case studies from EMFF projects and also from other programs today, we will see that synergies are already at work. But we would like to know how they can be improved in a more systematic way, what can be done, and this will be the purpose of the follow-up of the meeting. So to discuss all of this, we have a good mix of beneficiaries, of actors, stakeholders, and we really want to focus on discussion. This is a small step. We don't, achieve synergies and have conclusions on how to improve the EU landscape in one session, obviously, but this is an effort which we think is also very timely. Synergies are at work. We will see in a few minutes that they are at work also, very clearly and embedded in the EU policy framework. And that is a big shift, and we will see that in a minute with presentations by DG Mare and by DG RTD. So with this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention and give the floor back to David to introduce the follow-up of the session. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. That's a great overview. Just for terminology then, just because we have a lot of different people in the audience. So in terms of a beneficiary, what we're talking about is either a coordinator or a partner in the project. So there was over 346, I think, organizations involved in the EMFF, but we also have people involved in projects across Horizon 2020 and other mechanisms. And then in terms of Coherence Panel, just to clarify, a Coherence Panel is a panel that's been set up as part of the contract that represents the different funding mechanisms across the EU landscape. And they're representing, for example, LIFE, Interreg, Horizon Europe, etc., and different aspects of it. And the idea is that by having a Coherence Panel talking, sharing, and exchanging in this workshop, but also in general, then the idea is to see what we mean about linkages, synergies, and cooperation. So I don't know if there's any questions for Charlotte at this stage. I think we have time for one question if there is any. Like I said, if you have questions, by all means, throw them in the chat as we go along or as they come to mind, and I'll take them at the end of each presentation. No? Okay, great. So I will move on then. So we're moving straight into session B. We've set the scene. So now session B is talking about the system level. So when I talk about system level, I'm talking about the funding programs, the funding system linked to the policy. And I suppose the idea of these presentations are to set the scene in terms of the policy drivers and what do we mean by the ambition to scale up and what is the funding landscape. And then the whole idea is, well, what do we actually mean by the word integration, cooperation, and scale up? What does that mean to different people in the audience, the beneficiaries and the Coherence Panel, and to explore how that can happen going forward in the breakouts. So the first up, we have two presentations from the Commission, one from DG Mare and one from DG RTD, to try and set the scene on the policy drivers for the marine and maritime area. So first up, we have Andreea Stracinescu, from who's head of unit in DG Mare. And Andreea, I pass the floor to you if you want to share your screen.
Good morning. Exactly. This is what I'm trying to do. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So good morning, everybody. I would like briefly to introduce you.
Andreea, just one second.
Yes.
Just on your presentation, there's a couple of boxes kind of hazing out, and that's just the menu bars are on top of your PowerPoint. So if you just move your menus off, it might remove those.
Better?
Nearly. Well, at least
I mean,
it's top corner now anyway, so that's yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So briefly, I would like to present you what we have from the policy point of view in order to support the blue economy. Already you heard, and it was mentioned, the communication on sustainable blue economy that was launched last year in May. And with this communication, we wanted to bring different pieces together that are needed in order to be able to support the development of a sustainable blue economy. And these are the 5 ones that are really important and that are the base of the development. First of all, ocean knowledge. Of course, that we need to have the appropriate level of knowledge in order to be able to understand, first of all, what are the resources that we have, what is the impact on this, and how we can better plan them. And here there are all the initiatives that there are in place. First of all, we work and you are aware about EMONET, which is the base for the marine data, but as well Copernicus Marine Service. And also we work in order to improve the collaboration among the member states in terms of how this data is collected, it's monitored, it's observed with an ocean observation initiative. Then we need skills, and for this, beyond the calls that were already supported through the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, as well, we have a partnership, that an Erasmus Plus one, and we are going to continue this with dedicated calls for the blue careers. In terms of investments, Blue Invest already has 2 years of success, and now it's going to move into another dimension under Invest EU. There are as well at the level of the member states who know very well funds available, and the Recovery and Resilience Facility also allowed the member states who want it to address the blue economy. So in terms of investment, we are with the blue economy product under the InvestEU, we are going to put the disposition for the companies who need financing and who need also the technical assistance in order to access this financing. We are going to continue the level of support and even increase it. Research innovation, it's important also base for the development. And here is just to be mentioned as well that we have, it's not candidate mission anymore. Now it's a full-fledged mission on healthy ocean and waters, but also the European Partnership for Climate Neutral, Sustainable and Productive Blue Economy that is going to come in 2023. Smart specialization at the level of the member states is going to bring, of course, funds that are needed in order to support the development of innovation, but also to support the development of clustering, depending on the priorities for which member states are willing to engage. So smart specialization, another important source of collaboration among member states, but also to support the research innovation. And the last, but not the less important, it's maritime security. We know very well that there is a strategy in place and also developments from this point of view. So important to be considered as well. Now, how the blue economy supports the Green Deal? First of all, looking what we have in front of us, we know that we are in the Ocean Decade for Science, and there are outcomes that are going to be at the perspective of 2030 worked for or even achieved. So we have the European Green Deal strategies that are anchored in all of these, because zero pollution, circular economy, all of this, farm to fork, more energy from offshore, but also reducing the level of maritime emission, biodiversity and climate adaptation, all of these are contributing to the decade's outcomes, which are linked to clean, productive, healthy and safe ocean. We want, as I said, one of the base of the blue economy, it's improving our level of knowledge. So with the data strategy, we can have a more, I would say, predicted and accessible ocean. And the climate pact, of course, it's going to have its impact on the ocean. Now, what are the tools that are in place? First of all, Mission Ocean. because it will allow us to work in order to prevent the pollution, to reduce it, but also to work towards decarbonization and restoring the marine and freshwater ecosystems. So with the mission Ocean, we work both on marine and freshwater ecosystem. And as well, here from the point of view of data, already I mentioned EMONET, Copernicus, that are going to contribute to the destination Earth and ocean observation. Within Mission Ocean, and here it was also recently mentioned by the president of the commission in Brest on 11th of February, so not so very recent, it was announced the digital twin ocean ambition to have it delivered by 2024. So really there are important, I would say, initiatives that are going, all of them, to contribute to better know our ocean and as well to support the development of the blue economy. Ocean literacy, extremely important, because for all of us, it's important to really pay attention on the impact that we have on our ocean, on our ocean, and in the same time, it's extremely important to educate the future generation in the spirit of respecting the ocean. Now, let's look a little bit of what is in terms of legislation in the policy area, but also the status. So all of these are either adopted, but there are a lot which are upcoming. So for the energy, environment, and all of these important pieces of legislation are going to be offered. So for the energy, it's the emission trading system that is going to be revised, and offshore renewable energy strategy that was adopted in November 2020. Environment as well, things that are going to come in terms of ship recycling regulation, but also single-use plastic directive, we know that it was adopted. Then urban waste directive and industrial emissions directive are at the level of impact assessment. Also all linked to packing and packaging waste directive, but also bio-based and biodegradable plastic and marine strategy framework directive, either consultation or consultation for revision. So we know, and with this, I wanted to show what is in the pipeline, because all of these are going to have an impact on the blue economy. Consumer and sustainable food system in terms of consultation, it's going to, of course, to have an impact on also on food from the sea. Fisheries, with the fisheries control regulation proposal for revision, again, food from the sea. Justice, sustainable corporate governance, but also maritime. I mentioned already the ocean observation initiative that is in preparation. For this, we are responsible in the level of DG Mare. So we received the positive opinion from the Regulatory Scrutiny Board on the 19th of January. And now we work to finalize and to have adopted the proposal of the Commission before June, to the Council and the Parliament, before June 2022. So this is something that is going to come quite fast as well. And as I said, will support the collaboration at the level of the Member States among different departments that are collecting or observing information in order to be able to better work together, better share the assets, and then have transparency and collectiveness in terms of ocean observation. Maritime special planning is going as well to be evaluated. Taxation, energy taxation directive, and another important piece of legislation that is proposed for revision. And for the transport, there are parts of these that are going to come as well in quite soon. So fuel, EU maritime regulation, ship source pollution directive, but also alternative fuels infrastructure regulation, the review of recreational craft directive, and port reception facilities directive. This is already the last one approved. So as I said, all of these, they are supporting all the elements of the innovation in terms of digitalization, but also smart manufacturing, circular design, and biotechnology, and of course, supporting the Green Deal objectives. What I wanted to say before I end, for the part on investments, I would like just to invite all of you to join us on the 28th of March 2022. Hopefully it will be an event without restrictions. So 28th of March in Brussels, we are organizing Blue Invest. If you are not able to travel to Brussels, nevertheless, you can follow it online. And we are going to have our collaborators from EIF, and the product for the blue economy under InvestEU, it's going to be announced. Again, we are going to have the possibility of offering to all the ones interested to meet investors in order to support your solutions, in order to support your ideas, and to look for the financing that is needed in order to bring them to the market. So briefly, this I wanted to mention to you. As you can see from the legislative point of view, we can say that the framework is quite well either in place or to be completed soon. And with all these pieces of legislation, but also financial tools that are in place, we are certain that we can support the innovation that is needed in order to protect the ocean, but also to ensure its sustainable use of its resources. You are already involved in some projects. Now it will be extremely interesting, because all this clustering, it's about sharing. It's of course to see how all the good ideas that came to the projects can be further taken in another dimension. It's quite clearly important that projects are not staying only at the level of the projects when they are ending, but trying to see how this can be further replicated, how you can engage in different communities. I mentioned Mission Ocean, and probably Elisabetta is going to tell you more about this. We are going to build at the level of each sea basin a community, lighthouses, that is going to allow all the interested stakeholders to engage and to put in practice solutions that are needed for the transformation of the blue economy at the local level, but also to be able to engage with all the interested ones that are linked to the development of the blue economy. So my plea will be, do not stay only at the level of this project for the clustering. Try to think further and how you can take all the good ideas at another level. So with this being said, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I might just move on to the next presentation, and we'll take questions at the end of the next presentation for the two from the Commission. So I might just pass on to Elisabetta Balzi, who's Head of Unit for Healthy Seas and Oceans in DG Research. So Elisabetta, you're welcome, and would you like to try and share your screen?
Good morning, David, and many thanks to you and Charlotte and Andrea for the introductory presentations. And I would like to thank you also for having organized this meeting, because it is particularly relevant, particularly strategic, and particularly timely also for our mission. The concept of synergies is indeed key for our mission to restore our ocean and waters by 2030. Can you see my screen just to double check?
Yes, you also have, I think, two of the menus over the screen. Yeah. I think the one on the right in particular, if you can try and move that off, that might be better.
Yes, I'll try, but
yeah,
I'm not sure. But
either one on the top, but even on the one on the right, it might be the chat or something. If you just try and reduce it or move it off the screen. I think okay. This is Zoom not wanting the audience to know what you're saying in chat.
Good. So, so let me briefly introduce you the mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters that had been anticipated also by Andrea. And indeed, this is a joint venture. It is hosted under Horizon Europe, the Research Innovation Program, but actually it's a strategic mobilization initiative which goes far beyond our Research and Innovation Program. Let me just see if we can go further. Can you see the next slide? Doesn't look like moving.
We can't see it yet. There seems to be a slight delay.
Can you see the next slide?
I think maybe if we go back out to where it was in PowerPoint and just put it into a presenter view.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't move through them.
Just let me go back, then I'll stop sharing, start again. Can you see it now?
Not yet. If you share it the way you shared it the first time, I can show you where to click.
Now it should be coming.
Yeah, and if you see down the very bottom, there's like a book.
Good. So good. So I will maybe use the this presenter view, if you don't mind, so we don't lose more time. So just briefly to share with you some concepts, some main concepts of emissions. What are the emissions? So the emissions are new broad mobilization strategic initiatives to face the greatest challenges of our time. And among them, one of the 5 missions is dedicated to restoring our ocean and waters. They are rooted indeed on the Horizon Europe Research Innovation Program, but they are expected to go far beyond this program and the existing instruments. They are supposed to cut across policies, programs, and different levels of governance, from the European Union level to the international level, the national, the regional, and the local level, broadly involving all the citizens. Then how will the mission work, and what are we going to do in the next years? So the mission is expected to develop and to demonstrate innovative technological, social, business, and governance solutions. It will promote new forms of cooperation, and it will allow and call for everyone to play an active role in order to implement this mission. And as I said, the scope goes far beyond research and innovation, even though it starts from research and innovation, and this is the major core. As Andrea anticipated, our President Ursula von der Leyen announced this month at the One Ocean Summit that we are going to implement this mission to restore our ocean and waters by 2030. It's one of our major commitments that she announced, and that we are going to invest €500 million of euros in funding this mission at least from some European funds in the next years. She also announced that we are going to launch a digital twin of the ocean. We are going to deliver that, at least the piloting phase of it, by 2024. And this is also a very important deliverable of the mission. What is the approach that we are promoting in this mission? We are promoting a system approach to restore our ocean and waters as a system. So we are addressing seas, oceans, and inland waters as a system, as a connected system, what is called the hydrosphere by our mission board chair, Pascal Lamy. And here you see that the mission has been inspired by a major report that has been produced by the mission board, external experts, independent experts, in 2020. It's a report which is known as a starfish report, and the starfish actually is symbolic of the 5 legs can recall us the 3 objectives and the 2 enablers of the mission that I will present shortly. Then we have 2 main documents, the communication on the mission, which was adopted last year, and the implementation plan. And this, I would say, is our major reference document. How are we going to implement the mission? And the implementation is actually a joint commitment to restore our ocean and waters. It's a joint commitment because, as I said, it needs to be implemented not only at the European institutions level. It's a broad mobilization initiative which is calling for the joint involvement of a very large range of stakeholders. And the mission has 3 main objectives and 2 enablers, the 5 legs of the starfish. First objective is protecting and restoring marine and freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity. The second objective is to prevent and eliminate pollution of our oceans, seas, and waters. And the third is making the blue economy carbon neutral and circular. And for each of these objectives, we have specific targets which are taken from the European strategies and mainly within the Green Deal. So as also Andrea referred to, the mission is a main initiative which will contribute also to the implementation of the European Green Deal. Then we have, importantly, 2 enablers. One is to develop a digital ocean and waters knowledge system, including the important concept of developing a digital twin of the ocean. And second enabler, very important, is a public mobilization and engagement, because as I said, the mission is mainly a broad mobilization initiative. An important concept that we are using in the mission and to implement the mission itself is a concept of lighthouses. So what do we intend by lighthouses? The lighthouses are mainly the mission sites, which will allow to pilot, demonstrate, develop, and deploy the mission across all EU seas, ocean, and river basins. So these lighthouses will cover all the sea basins, oceans, and rivers. They will build on existing initiatives, on existing networks, and they will build on these experiences, and they will also involve different sources of funding, starting from Horizon Europe and going far beyond this program. They will aim at connecting and structuring the existing initiatives, deploying them, replicating them, scaling them up, and at broadly mobilizing all stakeholders. Each lighthouse will pilot and lead on one of the mission objectives. And as I said, we will have two phases. So in the beginning, in the first phase, we will have a piloting and demonstrating phase. And then this will be followed by a replication and scalability phase in the following years. And a very important scope of a mission is to provide access to the solution, the services, and advice across all basins. So to summarize, we are going to launch, and we are in the process of launching, 4 lighthouses in different seas, ocean, and river basins, with a first focus on one of each of the specific objectives. But that doesn't mean that those lighthouses will only act on that. They will start to gain traction. They will start on one objective, but then they will replicate and scale up and involve and share the best practices with all the other basins. So Baltic and North Sea Basin, with a focus on making the blue economy carbon neutral and circular. The Mediterranean Sea Basin, we focus on pollution, and then 2 lighthouses, one on the Atlantic and Arctic coast, and the other one on the Danube River Basin, focusing on protecting and restoring marine and freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity. As I anticipated, there will be 2 phases, so 2021 to 2024, with a development and piloting phase, and then starting from 2025, the last 5 years of the mission, with focus on deployment, upscaling, and replicating across all sea and river basins. We will also have, by next year, and already starting by mid this year, an assessment and midterm review of the mission. So what are the next phases? We are now, this year, and in this present moment, we have started to implement with some support from Horizon Europe with the first 4 programs and call for the mission. We have now an ongoing call with deadlines in April. At the same time, we are developing another process which is not connected to our work program, but it's more a process of engagement and broad commitments to involve stakeholders, which is the development of a charter that will call for participation in the mission by broadly by member states, stakeholder regions, and international stakeholders, private and public sectors, citizens and youth to participate in the mission with concrete actions. You see here a summary of how the Commission is providing support for the lighthouses, but as I explained, there is not only the Commission support, but this is what we are offering at the present moment. It's both strategic and financial support, mainly through Horizon Europe. We are preparing some baseline studies for the lighthouses. With our call for proposals, we are starting to prepare a portfolio of projects, mainly innovation actions and initiatives, which will implement the mission. We are also calling for coordination and support actions. One was already selected and it's in the process of the contract is being prepared to support the mission and the lighthouses. Others are being called for each of the lighthouses in the current call. Then we are also going to prepare an implementation platform with a public procurement. And as I said, then there is a parallel process, which is not within Horizon Europe, but it's a more general, broad engagement process, which is the preparation of this implementation charter. Why joining the mission? We are calling for all stakeholders to join the mission because this will allow not only to reach a common objective, which concerns all of us, but it also provide access to knowledge, to risk assessment methods. It will allow the opportunity to be part of a community of practice, to network and to share knowledge and experiences and best practices. It will allow to get some support from this mission platform. It will give access to tools to engage with your citizens and empower them. It will give access to advisory services for public and private funding. It will give visibility to your efforts, and it will allow, in the case of member states and regions, actually to implement their policy priorities, which are often very much aligned with the one of the mission. What is happening now? As I said, there is a call for proposal ongoing. We had an info day in January. The info day is recorded, so there is also a link to the recording of the info day if you would like to have more information further in my presentation. But let me now focus actually on what is the topic of today's discussion, which is, as I said, it's key for our mission. So synergies and teaming up beyond what is the Commission level of European Union level and even the Horizon Europe level is key for the mission. So we need to build synergies, first of all, and to team up across different EU programs. So what you're doing today is really key for that. It's really the core of our concept. So just to mention some of Horizon Europe, EMFF and EMFF now live, but then many other projects, Interreg, InvestEU. So nearly all range of EU instruments can be relevant to the mission. So we need to build bridges and join forces, team up, build synergies and build on complementarities of what is being can be delivered by each of the program, because together we'll deliver much more than what is delivered by some of the single programs. Then we need to build synergies with the member states and regions. Member states and regions have very important national and regional programs and initiatives which are key for the mission goals. So we are also teaming up with member states and regions. We have partnerships with them. We need to team up and find synergies with international partners and initiatives. There are initiatives, again, which are very relevant for the mission, the UN Decade of Ocean Sciences. We have initiatives in function of the basin. We have different initiatives, the one of the Union for the Mediterranean. In the Atlantic, for example, we have the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, just to give some examples. Then we need to find synergies with the public and private sectors and with investors. So with networks of university, with joint undertakings, which are public-private partnerships, with the banks and with the philanthropies. So we are having dialogues with these very important stakeholders, and we need to join forces with them. And then last, but certainly not least, we have to find synergies and teaming up with citizens and particularly youth initiatives. And here there are many which are relevant, and we do hope that we will really very much build on that. We have just recently produced one publication, thanks, by the way, also to the collaboration with SINEA, with excellent collaboration with colleagues in SINEA. And here I would like to thank Charlotte and Claudia and all the colleagues who contributed to this. And this is just an example of projects which are coming from here we took the example of three most relevant programs, the previous programs, because of course only there we can see the examples of what we achieved so far. So Horizon 2020, the EMFF, and the LIFE program. And you see that for each objective, I will not go into the detail, but I'm just calling your attention to that. So we are already very much in this type of reflection. So we really need to do the analysis across the programs and join forces across the programs. And we see that we already have very relevant examples for each of the objectives. Here we have examples for the first objectives of protecting and restoring marine biodiversity and ecosystems. There are some projects, I don't go into detail. I know you are going to present some projects, and there are many beneficiaries present today, so you know them better than I, but I would just like to call the attention on the fact that we really need to work together. Here we are just giving the example of three most relevant programs. but we need also to go beyond that. This is the example of Objective 2, prevent, eliminate pollutions, very important projects from each of the 3 programs. And the same for Objective 3, of course, making a sustainable blue economy carbon neutral and circular. Here also we have example of very relevant projects portfolio from the 3 respective programs. So this, I would say, is the main message that we would like to pass. It's very important that we build synergies. There are ways of building synergies among the different programs. So we are here also to facilitate this process. Also at the level of the project, we would like really to encourage you to consider all those possibilities of synergy and to help us in this process, which is key for the mission to be able to deliver. I just finished with giving you some websites where you will find more information, including this publication of synergies, including general documents of the mission, and many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Elisabetta. If you can stop sharing your screen, that'd be great. I have one question in the chat from Avella. Maybe Avella, if you want to unmute your microphone and just ask the question to DG Mare, I think.
Hi, thank you. Good morning to everyone. My name is Alan and I'm representing AISMEA, the agency. We deal particularly with SMEs. It's just a question, a short question for DG Mare, if you don't mind. I was looking closely at the presentation. Thank you, very clear. And also thank you to Charlotte, of course, for the invitation and also for her presentation. Just a clarification from your side, if you don't mind, because I noticed, at least I think I noticed that the emphasis placed by Mare was on 8 policy areas. There was a particular slide on environment, on the policy areas listed, energy, environment, etc. But I failed to spot SMEs, and I'm wondering whether it's because at Mare you deal with SMEs in a horizontal manner, or whether it's kind of integrated horizontally there, because as far as I know, you did not mention SMEs as a policy area there. Which you link your own initiatives to. Yeah, maybe you could kindly let us know whether this is the case. Thank you.
Oh, in all the policies area, of course, that the SMEs are in. So these are the objectives that are linked to the Green Deal, but in order to be achieved, of course, that you have SMEs in all of them. So let me give you some examples. If we are taking research and innovation, you are aware that in all the calls that are financed by us, there is a need to have a certain percentage of SMEs. If I'm taking Blue Invest, one of the, I would say, most important initiative of DG Mare, this is targeted mostly to startup and SMEs at the end. So everything that is going to be put in place, and this is not something not to be neglected. So we are putting 20 million. Then InvestEU, it's adding the same amount. EIF, it's stopping, and all this amount is going to be invested in SMEs and startups. So then, if we are taking the marine knowledge, we know very well that a lot of developments that are happening in terms of better observing the ocean are based on SMEs and startups. So it's not necessarily that we are starting from SMEs, but beyond each of the initiatives that are supporting the policy objectives, you have them. And in some cases, as Blue Invest, it's only them. So if it was not mentioned, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So there are there, and yeah, I mean it's a very clear. First of all, if you look as an example, because previously in the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, we work with grants. So we had 2 years of projects that were financed, and the grants that were offered for more than 20. So here again, you have startups and SMEs. It's just a way of reporting, but doesn't mean that they are neglected.
Okay, thank you. I'm just in the interest of time, I think we're going to move on, but like I said, if there's more questions, you can send messages to the speakers, or you can share it in the chat with everyone. So we're going to move on to the next two speakers. And the next two speakers, we've just had the scene on the policy drivers, overarching policy drivers around the marine and maritime. And now we're going to ask two speakers to kind of inspire us in terms of this concept of scale up. The Commission's talking about not just research innovation, but also this mobilization and bringing solutions to the market. So we're looking for these speakers to set the scene as to how they've gone from research and innovation projects to scaling up through different funding mechanisms. So the first speaker we have is Eva Perez Garcia. Eva, if you want to try and share your screen. And Eva is going to talk to us about the Green Sea Ports project initiative.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll put it in presenters mode. Good morning, my name is Eva Perez. I work for Fundación Valencia Port, a research and innovation center based at the Port of Valencia. And in this brief presentation, I'm going to talk to you about a journey from idea to impact, focusing on the Green Sea Ports project. First, I'll give you a brief overview of the project to then focus on the origins and the projects that allowed us to do our research and development that was previous to the development of Green Sea Ports. We'll also talk about plans for future implementation, and finally, the challenges we are facing towards deployment. Green Sea Ports is a collaborative project in which 12 different partners from 4 different countries are collaborating to develop digitalization tools and technologies that will support better port environmental performance. We have 3 technical activities. In the first one, we have installed a new sensor network in each port that is participating in the project. And these sensors are linked to a newly developed port environmental platform. This platform is also fed from existing systems, like the Port Management Information System, Port Community System, and Terminal Operating Systems. All this information that we are gathering in the port environmental platform is used using business intelligence and artificial intelligence predictive modeling in 6 case studies dealing with port traffic congestion, air quality, maritime accessibility, noise in ports, ship-to-shore crane productivity, and measuring real-time emissions along a transport chain. The results are being shared with internal users in the ports, but also with external users, with members of our port clusters, but also with the City Council and neighborhoods. Before we could launch the Green Sea Ports project that is bringing different technologies and concepts to TRL 9, so very close to pre-commercialization stage, we worked in these 2 projects that were funded by Horizon 2020. One of them is Inter-IoT. In this project, we worked on interoperability among different Internet of Things platforms. And the inputs, the results that we achieved in Inter-IoT were necessary inputs in order to launch Green Sea Ports. Because in Inter-IoT, we develop interoperability between different platforms. We also designed and tried an Internet of Things platform, and also did fieldwork on sensorization of ports facilities. Here we focused on dynamic lighting. So once we tested that it was possible to be fed into a new platform, different systems and different sensors, we could launch Green Sea Ports, where 9 platforms have been integrated in the port environmental platform. Another project that was also funded by Horizon 2020 was Transforming Transport. And here we experimented with machine learning, and we also developed certain tools and processes that were very necessary for data quality management. Actually, 70% of big data work deals with data understanding, filtering, and cleaning. All these processes have been inputs, again, for the models that we are building in Green Sea Ports. We have plans for future implementation. One of the technologies that we are testing in real-life operations in green seaports is a spectrographic camera able to measure ship emissions remotely from the port terminals. And this camera we are going to commercialize in this project, Perseo, that has been awarded some funding from the Ports 4.0, that it's the program in Spain, the Trade Tech Fund in Spain. So we are going to create a new joint venture between one of the subcontractors in Green Sea Ports and Fundación Valencia Port. And this startup is going to commercialize this technology, but also increase its scope to measure nitrogen oxides, increase the distance that we can measure the ship emissions from, and other items that we are going to include in it to make it even more attractive as a new product in the market. And there are also other ideas that are starting to take shape, like the implementation of green seaports in more ports. We know that several ports in Spain are preparing proposals to be submitted to the Next Generation EU funds in order to implement these technologies in their facilities. One of our partners, Balearia, is also going to implement the technologies that they have developed in green seaports in all the transport links that they operate between the Iberian Peninsula, the Balearic Islands, Ceuta, Melilla, and the Canary Islands. And this is again a proposal to be submitted to the Next Generation EU funds as an implementation project. We also have ideas for other probably connecting Europe facility projects like real emission measurements along door-to-door international transport chains, and also allocation of emission measurements to cargo shipments. And finally, talking about the challenges we are facing, one of them is the required investment. There is a lack of EU and national funding programs for first industrial deployments, and it is difficult to go from TRL 9 to first market deployment. We are aware that we are very lucky to be facing deployment at this time when the Next Generation EU funds are going to be deployed in many countries. But without those programs, it would not be that easy, particularly when we are talking about maritime transport services. We are also seeing that sometimes there is corporate rejection. Innovation can be perceived as a loss of resources for daily business. And some partners that have been working with us in the first projects like Transforming Transport or Inter-IoT have seen that they need to dedicate lots of resources that they cannot be dedicated to daily business at the same time. Sometimes that partner is going to drop out from the consortium in later stages. And if the partner was crucial for the development of the project, well, we are not going to be able to scale it up. Innovation is a collaborative process, and companies need to be able to collaborate with other organizations to achieve optimal results. Sometimes the creation of joint ventures is also necessary as a deployment stage, and this creates an additional administrative burden. And finally, technological challenge. Technology evolves continuously, and the product or service that we are trying to develop needs to keep evolving as the concept matures along the TRL pipeline. So these are just 4 challenges that we wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for the organizers for giving us the opportunity to take part in this workshop, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ava. Very clear and a nice example. I'm going to move straight on to the next speaker. Like I said, again, if you want to post in chat, I see there's a lot of activity, and maybe if you have any questions for Ava, she can answer in the chat function. I'm going to move straight on to the next presentation on Scale Up from Merlin, I think is how it's pronounced, and we have Madeline presenting on behalf of that group. So Madeline, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Can you see the slides on the screen at the moment?
Yes, perfect.
Brilliant. I will keep it quite brief, so that, as I know we're already running over. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the Merlin and Jive projects, which are projects focused on hydrogen mobility scale up. I represent Element Energy, who's the coordinator of those projects, and we are a low carbon energy consultancy. A bit about the three projects. They are the flagship fuel cell bus projects and infrastructure projects in Europe, which are aiming to deploy over 300 buses and 20 hydrogen refueling stations by the end of this year. So I guess obviously not a maritime focused project, but this is more of an example of how we've taken, I guess, a different technology through the stages of where we have tens of buses, 5 to tens of buses, all the way up to the hundreds of buses and hopefully thousands after the end of the project. So the three projects are run as a single project, a single consortium across 17 sites. We have over 50 different organisations across the three projects. We also have dissemination and communication activities, which engage external stakeholders to the consortium across a further 12 observer countries. So it's really quite a big scale sort of flagship for the technology. Through the projects, we are aiming to firstly bring the price of the technology down so that it is more affordable. We're still definitely at the pre-commercial stage. We're at about a TRL 8, bringing this to a TRL 9 through this project. We have also used joint procurement, so different cities, bus operators and regions coming together to purchase vehicles together in order to access economies of scale to bring those prices down. The second part of the project is obviously focused around the infrastructure so that we can actually fuel the buses with hydrogen. So we are deploying 20 stations through Drive 2 and Merlin in order to underpin the deployment of the vehicles and actually test the hydrogen technology in practice. So that is, in a nutshell, is the project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the synergies between the funding programs. So you'll see that we are funded by both the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking for the buses, for Drive and Drive 2, and for the stations. 7 of them are financed through the CEF program from Synergies under Merlin. So going into a little bit more detail about those different funding streams. So as I said, we coordinate the projects as a sort of a single consortium. We have the same goals, the same actors throughout that, but each of the local projects within that is run slightly differently. So we started off in 2016 with a fuel cell bus commercialization study from the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking, which identified the need to kind of go through this pretty ambitious program to actually scale up that technology. So we started looking at sort of how we could get fuel cell buses sort of across many different countries and new actors, and looking at how we could do that through the framework of European collaboration. So that's how initially the concept was born. We saw through Synergies, or INEA at the time, that there was an availability to look at getting hydrogen technologies deployed across the TEN-T network. So that is how the first sites within the project were selected. So that's the 7 cities and regions funded under the Merlin project with 5.5 million. We then built upon that with another 10 regions through the course of the next 2 years, with funding of 32 million and 25 million respectively for the first and second parts of the bus deployment for the Drive projects. So that's all about, together that represents about a third of the budget for the actual programs. It's 228 million euro project in total. We then also have national and regional funding, which makes up another third roughly, and private sector contributions of a third by the operators of the vehicles and the hydrogen refueling stations. So that is I guess how the projects have come together. We have encountered quite a lot of challenges along the way. It's not simple when you are sort of mixing multiple sources of funding together in this way, with that collaboration between EU programs and also national regional programs and the private sector as well. So this has added some timescale challenges. It's added administrative challenges and sort of complexity in terms of how we're running the projects and merging the different milestones and project planning together. So it does add about 12 months of additional time onto any project plan, which needs to be taken into account when you're setting up your own project plans and looking at the possible challenges and obstacles along the way. I think obviously we were conducting a joint procurement with various different local actors and private actors within the bus sector. And that is not always easy either. It's again a huge collaborative effort to actually make the technology affordable. So that also does have additional complexities. I think what we did do quite well was we engaged very early with all project stakeholders. Engaging the actual end users at the time was really crucial to work out how we could use the funding through the projects to actually support them, and what was needed for them to actually take on the commitment of having these new vehicles within their fleets and achieving that kind of affordable cost. So that is just a bit of a snapshot of what we've encountered along the way. I think we have been very lucky to have very good relationships with both the EU funding bodies and the national funding bodies that do fund the projects. We are using those relationships to kind of coordinate a communications campaign to further allow the technology to reach new audiences and new potential end users. We have a huge focus on obviously sharing the data through the FCHJU Trust database, but also through quarterly publications of the results of the trials. And then thirdly, I think looking at how we as a flagship consortium can underpin the next wave of fuel cell bus development. So we're looking at sort of collaborating with Synergies follow-on project H2 Bus Europe, which has received a further 40 million to bring the technology to full commercialization. So that is essentially what we're doing in order to make sure that we are using the funding from the European Union in order to kind of kickstart the sector. And I think I want to finish. I've got a couple of quick slides with actually what this funding has been able to unlock. So you'll see the chart on the left-hand side of the screen shows the historic European Commission fuel cell bus projects from 2009 onwards. So the projects, the Drive 2 and Merlin are the projects for 2017-2018, and you can see already that there's quite a significant cost down for the technology, and that has been achieved over that decade. What we've done through these projects is go further. We have got to the point which you can see on the graph on the right, where we have actually exceeded the target set for us in terms of costs for the vehicles. So we were aiming for 650,000 euros per vehicle. We're now in the region of 500,000, which is also accessible for smaller fleet sizes. So when we started the projects and the first orders were made in 2018, you could not access low prices unless you were ordering over 50 buses at a time. Now you can access lower prices for vehicle orders as few as 10, 5 in some cases for the more recent orders. So that is a really good outcome of how that European funding has been used. It is clear that that the projects have enabled us to really get to that scale, and we are seeing sort of organic orders coming through for buses now, which are not financed by European money, but rather by sometimes national funding and sometimes private operators. So it's really, really encouraging to see how the projects have enabled that scale and are producing a competitive market for the technology in the current years. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation this morning, and I will end it there.
Thanks very much, Madeline, and thanks for sharing your example. I mean, whilst it's not marine, I think it's a great example and shows the complexity as to how you make it work and bring a solution to market, but also the complexity of funding sources you've had to get there. So it's quite interesting, I think, for this community to see that example. I might just quickly ask Sophia from CEF if she has any quick reflection on that as one of the Coherence Panel members.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I would like, first of all, to thank the two CEF projects that they were presented here, and all them, the people that they were involved in this preparation of this workshop. We as CEF, we are an implementation program. That means that we do not, we would say the last stage in this series of programs that they develop the technologies, they test them, and then they explore them at the last level. So I think there is a lot of things that we could do when the technologies are mature, and when these priorities are identified as such through the results achieved from the previous phases. I just want to give you a very short, just one slide of the type of the support we can give to the maritime sector. I'll just put it, if I can, in the presentation mode. So we are supporting, I would say that here are how we can support infrastructure for the maritime sector. The first tool that we have is the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Facility, which is very relevant to the last presentation that we had, which is actually supporting recharging any fuel infrastructure for maritime also reasons, for inland waterways vessels. We support even the construction of electric and hydrogen vessels, and the support, of course, of LNG bunkering vessels. On the second priority, we have the motorways of the sea, which is upgrade of the port infrastructure, hinterland connections, facilitation to short sea shipping, what we maybe some of the motorways of the sea, ICT platforms, ice breaking, and all year round navigability. And another priority, we have the maritime ports, where in there we focus on infrastructure at the port side, and also shore side electricity supply, road rail connections, and port access, both from the seaside but also from the mainland. And we also have some support to the necessary ICT tools for European single window, maritime single window, and the VTMIS, which is, and also, of course, all the port community systems. So these are the areas that as CEF we can support. And I think that this is what we need to keep in mind when you thinking about how you can follow, receive money to support your existing actions. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Sophia. I think we'll leave time a little bit later and also in the breakouts for the other Coherence panel members to give their reflections, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. So it's actually my turn now. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Sorry. And I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint, sorry. Okay, so my job is just to quickly set the scene on the funding landscape leading into the breakout session. So I'll be quite brief in the interest of time. So as you've heard this morning, we have a lot of global commitments, and they have led into EU policies, key policies, both overarching like the Green Deal, but also specific maritime and marine policies. The challenge, I suppose, is the corresponding funding landscape. And what I would say is I've never seen a better time for marine and maritime funding. Overall, the funding programs have increased, but in particular, there's an agenda, and obviously we now have a mission, which is really interesting and essential. So when we look at the EMFF, which is the financial program from 2021 to 27, we're looking at about 1.3 trillion euros of funding across a lot of different strategic areas. We also then have the COVID factor. So we have the Next Generation EU fund, and that's also seeing a lot of money flooding into the member states, around 806 billion. So, for example, in Italy, we've seen that there's 500 million allocated to the marine. In Spain, I think there's 50 million in 5 different regions, 10 million per region. So we're seeing money come into the maritime community, not just directly through EC direct funding mechanisms, but also through the recovery and resilience funding. So overall, we're looking at about 2 trillion euros over the next 6 or 7 years, which is a massive investment. But it's also asking the community to come with some solutions and achieve some impacts that are quite ambitious in the time frame between now and 2027, leading into 2030 for some of the policy targets. So obviously we have Horizon Europe, and like I said, we have the Coherence Panel present from many of the different areas that are crossing into marine and maritime topics. And we have obviously in Pillar 2 and Pillar 3, but also excellent science in Pillar 1. We also then have all the other mechanisms across the different systems and programs, both direct managed, but also regionally managed or nationally managed. And there is a desire for enhanced synergies, compatibility, coherence. So again, this is why this workshop is very timely in what we're setting the scene on. But we also have to remember that we're looking for research and innovation to address strategic targets and strategic impacts. And projects are being asked with very ambitious core topics to get their results and impacts and outcomes that align to the policies. And like I said, as Elizabeth said, the mission is going from research innovation to mobilization of all actors and stakeholders to solve the problems and challenges. So we have to think about how knowledge flows across the system. How do we go from communicating into disseminating into exploiting? And obviously that varies between science to policy and science to industry or science to society. But the whole question is, how do we manage the efficient flow across this 2 trillion euros of investment so that the right knowledge, I think someone said, how do we assess the maturity of knowledge and make it flow? How do we make sure we're getting the right knowledge in a timely fashion and we're funding along that pathway? So here, for example, you've got the TRLs, you've also got policy readiness levels, but you've also got this diagram to the bottom right from JRC, which is this kind of valley of death concept between research innovation and impacts. And as you heard from Madeline, a great example of the complexity of funding and initiatives to try and get there and move things forward and bring in the stakeholders. So I suppose what we need to think about is, on a project level, how are we collaborating, interacting, and sharing and managing knowledge, and how is it flowing? This is just based on keywords of the objectives of projects. It's not based on the results of projects. So the question is, again, how do you go into assessing maturity and flowing of results and knowledge and outcomes from projects? But then we also have to think about, how do we cluster and aggregate? This is only a mock-up, but how do we manage the projects and get that clustering, grouping, and collaboration? How do we make sure that good knowledge flows from one project into a follow-on project that helps it progress to market? We also need to think about the stakeholders. It's not just about the research community, it's about all stakeholders. So how do we bring in the right stakeholders at the right time, on the right conditions and incentives to make things happen and move knowledge towards impacts? And lastly, how do we get cooperation and integration across the programs, understanding that it's a lot. I'm an expert in this space, and I still find it hard to navigate right now. How do people who are SMEs or are not experienced with this program understand how to play the game and transition across funding mechanisms to make things happen? So that's really what this workshop is about, that exploration of what does it mean, integration, cooperation, and how do we get from results into scale up and application of solutions to solve problems. And as I mentioned, and it's been mentioned in the previous presentations, there is a complexity issue here. So we need to tease that out and work out how we can improve efficiency and flow. So the idea of the breakout is to try and see your ideas and understanding the topic and the words integration, cooperation, and scale up. So the idea is that we will go into a breakout now, and because we're running a little bit late, my suggestion, but also telling the rapporteurs, is that what I suggest is we'll leave the rooms open from now until when we come back at 11 o'clock, and the rapporteurs will manage and make sure you find time to have a coffee break in that time frame. But essentially what we're trying to do here is reflect on the presentations, have an open discussion, sharing experiences and peer networking. Understanding you might not be able to come to solve the problem, but there is also another around 10 more workshops planned in this contract where we can go into depth in certain issues if you identify them as barriers or challenges. So to frame the discussion, I've got 2 prompt questions for you. What integration and cooperation is needed across funding programs to achieve the policy targets? So, how does knowledge flow? What are the conditions? What are the incentives? How do you deal with the different regions and geography of sea basins? How do we deal with the investment funding issue? So what are the needs in terms of integration cooperation to ensure that knowledge flows efficiently and we get solutions at market? And also, secondly, what are the challenges in the current funding system? How could they be overcome? So what are the conditions, the eligibility, the funding ratios, all those kind of questions as to how could we make it easier to focus in on creating valuable knowledge and bring it to market? What could we simplify or improve to make the system flow better? I suppose are the 2 questions. In terms of methodology, like I said, we have about 30 minutes now. If we conclude your coffee break, we're going to use a thing called Google Jamboard. If you haven't had experience, it's very simple to use. There's a direct link that's going to be put in the chat right now, and you can click on it. We're going to assign people to groups randomly. And like I said, we have a lot of different people with different backgrounds. So please recognize that as you have discussions. Be careful with your acronyms. We have a rapporteur per room, and they'll introduce themselves as we start. And their job is to involve everyone in the discussion and try and capture the key messages. And like I said, the rapporteur will try and capture the key messages, but you as participants can also add what we call sticky notes into the Jamboard. And the rapporteur's job is to try and cluster them based on common messages or common themes. So like I said, we'll go straight into the coffee break. We'll leave the room open now as we throw you into the rooms, and we'll come back at 11 o'clock, not 10:55, 11 o'clock, to just see some of the results. But don't worry, we will also write up the results and share them with you after the event, and the Jamboards will be available. So just in terms of what is a Jamboard, like I said, the open link, what you need to do is when you go into your breakout room, you'll be numbered breakout room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. You need to find the room, and that's the room that you will work on the Jamboard. And the idea is that you can just use sticky notes just like on a post-it board. And what we suggest is that we use yellow notes where there's kind of collective co-comments from the group, blue notes if it's more a Coherence Panel comment, and green notes if it's more a beneficiary comment. And just to give you a quick look of what it looks like, 1 is how you navigate through the room. So it's just tabs back and forth. So you just find out your breakout room corresponding to the number of the breakout. 3 is on the left hand, there's a little menu bar, and if you double click on sticky notes, this is where you have a pop-up sticky note. And then once you've written your sticky note, you just press save, and then you can position it on the board. 4 is the color coding, and we provide the guidance at the top of the board. And 5 is to try and, maybe this is the rapporteur's job, to try and cluster around the challenge and ideas as to how to overcome it. Okay. And that's it. Okay, so we only have 10 minutes now. So like I said, we'll we'll capture the original Jamboards, and we'll also try and aggregate the results and share it back with all the participants in the event report. But I might just go quickly and ask maybe the rapporteurs if they have any comments. And then, like I said, as we move through the Jamboards, if the point has already been made by a previous rapporteur, then you just add if there was anything different or any other aspect to it. So I'll just go in order. So Anna, I think you were in breakout room 1. Do you want to maybe just summarize a couple of key messages that came out of the discussion?
Yes, sure. So as far as the question 1 is concerned, what integration and cooperation is needed across funding programs to achieve the policy targets? The rules among the different funding schemes should be similar. The communication should be better because now the SMEs have difficulties in obtaining all the informations. And well, the people who are assessing the projects have the best overview, so they should inform the SMEs about opportunities in the synergies with other projects. As far as the question 2 is concerned, there is a need of the portal that will present outcomes of the projects from the same area. Oh, sorry, I will go back for 1 minute to the question 1, because other suggestion that was made that informations that should be published on the websites of different projects can be dangerous for SMEs, as sometimes it's requested to share sensible information like intellectual property, that for some projects it's well, it's dangerous. Going back to the second question, there could be a unit from the EC side that could build a client journey, so assist the client from low level of TRL to the highest level, that would suggest them, well, now you are ready for this call because you obtained the certain level of TRL.
Okay, thanks, Anna. I'll move on to the next group. That's great, just to set the scene. So as I move through the rapporteurs, just maybe add any extra points. If the point's already been made, you don't need to repeat it. So Olivia, I see you've got a lot of comments.
We have a lot of comments here. I suppose we took nearly the 2 questions, kind of blended a little, but one of the main things we were talking about is communication, so sharing results and showcasing what is possible, what are the needs, and having stakeholders involved earlier on, you know, to get around these legislation barriers. If there's permits, get connected to policymakers. And I suppose some of the solutions just there were to channel barriers through the assistance mechanisms, and they may be able to link you to national legislators. And we also discussed the EEN, the Enterprise Europe Network, and how they're acting as scale-up advisors, and they can help support by helping to find business partners or creating synergies and things like that. And they can, we had examples of how they provided information in terms of banking and things like that. And on the other side, we talked about the idea of paying attention to double funding. Obviously, when you're making these applications, there's also difficulties introducing new technologies. There might be certain requirements, such as business plans. And then in terms of high TRL projects, there could be commercialization opportunities. Sometimes the support is not clear, so we sort of had a mix.
Thanks, Olivia. So the need for kind of brokers or facilitators or supports to bridge and connect people. Okay, Valentina.
Sorry, Valentina's asked me to report the outcome because something came up in the meantime. But so I'm gonna report on her behalf. Okay, so I think what is interesting, there are some commonalities also with the room I was moderating, which is interesting as usual. First of all, there's this overlapping and well, perceived overlapping and sometimes lack of coordination. And an example is that shipping and ports project should be coordinated. For example, this is something that also came up in the other room. I'll go over it in a minute. And for this reason, it might be useful to coordinate in such a way as to capitalize efforts. And this is also important in terms of accessibility, because well, besides disseminating project reports, which sometimes are too focused on the formal element of a project, it might be interesting to ensure when possible, of course, full access to also to data and maps, for example, as they can be powerful dissemination tools. When it comes to data, it's important to push more to the concept of FAIR data. For those who are not aware with the acronym, FAIR is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data. And yeah, of course, the intellectual property must be protected, but the issue of releasing FAIR data is becoming increasingly important. I'm also involved in other data-driven initiatives, and there's quite a discussion in this domain, the maritime domain, to push for releasing open and FAIR data. Of course, the overarching objective is this need for continuation, so that the results of the different research projects should be in some way coordinated at a higher level, so to make sure that they can continue and spin off into concrete projects. And in terms of challenging, one challenge is to select the best instrument in a strategic vision, and also there is this lack of understanding, which is something that also came up in the other room, of all the existing instruments. Sometimes there are too many, and it might be a paradox, but too many funding opportunities may just confuse people and potential beneficiaries. So then one would need connections between these existing instruments that can help projects to grow and to continue further. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Alessandra. Sarah?
Yeah, no, I think David, a lot of the
few key points, maybe, Sarah, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the points have been captured, and mostly just to simplify the landscape, so that people know what's accessible or available to them, and then maybe to simplify the administrative processes as people move between programs. And I think overall, we were also saying that if we could, encourage more communication, or that there's procedures in place so that we could kind of cluster like projects across funding programs, so that people really know what's going on, in all of Europe and not just in their funding program. Could be a good opportunity for scale up and scale out of results as well.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Ava, anything to
add? Very similar to the ones, but maybe just the one comment that, not only is it difficult maybe for beneficiaries, but also it also can be challenging for people involved in program management, about kind of bringing together the different funding sources. And that, one portal is kind of too complicated to kind of convey all of the information. And so maybe, yeah, something else needs to be thought of.
Okay, great. And then Alessandra, anything that has been missed out in the previous?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that some issues were common to both rooms, so I'm not going to dwell on those, like the difficulty in finding the right opportunities among so many programs. So some help would be needed for beneficiaries to identify the best opportunity. It's been suggested that at the Commission levels, thematic groups should be set up with specific tools to guide participants into this multitude of funding programs, and also maybe they could benefit from programs. Well, maybe call for proposals. It was also a question I asked that with multi-funding, which means funded by different programs. It would also be useful to gather funding opportunities from different programs in a single entry point, where these opportunities can be searched by keywords. That would, sorry, I was looking at the show.
Sorry.
No, don't worry. I have it on my browser, and yes, it would be useful to have this single entry point where different opportunities from funding programs could be searched through keyword. That would make beneficiaries' life much easier. Well, it's been noted by the Commission that actually this is what's happening now, when everything is moving into one place, and yeah, it's acknowledged that there's this plethora of programs, but it's also true that every program has a different focus, and this is inevitable because they're pursuing different policy objectives. So yes, of course, coordination and complementarity is needed and is being pursued, but differences in focus will have to remain. And I think what is very interesting that has been noted by the Commission is that what we need is a path from research to development to market, including upscale and hence real innovation. Now, nobody expects that we find a solution to that here today in just 15 minutes, but I personally, for future workshops, I would start from this consideration and try to see and explore whether we can find this path, so that then we can, have a project maybe at a low TRL level under a program, and then we can nurture it. I guess nurture was the word that was used to, for instance, pass the commercialization, the valley of death, and making it scale up and get bigger. Something that was mentioned as a challenge is that it's difficult to access the different levels of funding, like regional, national, and EU, especially for startups and early stage companies, because they need a very long time to get the first grant accepted because they don't have an established track record. So more information, but related to that, more information and awareness raising on funding opportunities would be needed. And then this was this general comment here that existing silos need to be broken so that we can really foster integration and synergies. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Alessandro. So, I mean, I think obviously, as Alessandro said, you can't solve this problem in 30 minutes or 25 minutes, but I suppose this is just the first workshop to try and explore what are the issues and what are the challenges, so that then in further workshops we can delve a little bit deeper into exploring how to overcome them. And I suppose it's all about making sure there's no repetition, but also that, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're nurturing good knowledge and helping it flow along pathways towards the impacts that are targeted. And it's all about efficiency, I suppose. So I hope that you found that useful, but like I said, it's only a starting point of the exercise. So if it's okay with you, we're going to move into session C, the final session, and this is about sharing best practices and identification of barriers, challenges, as well as opportunities, benefits, but more from a beneficiary point of view. So to help set the scene, we've asked 4 projects who have had EMFF funding, but also other funding to mature their knowledge across their own pathways, to share their experiences, to serve as inspiration as to how knowledge can flow efficiently, but also the challenges for knowledge flowing efficiently across projects and funding mechanisms. So I'm going to give the floor to Marginette. I'm not actually sure who's presenting on Marginette. Maybe the speaker could unmute. Do we have
Hello, it's me.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi,
I'm Fantina Madricardo from the CNR ISMA in Venice. I just want to share my screen, if you can see it. Just a second. Okay, so can you see it?
Yes, you just need to bring it into presenter mode.
Okay, so is it okay like that?
Perfect, Fantina.
Okay, so what I wanted to present was the experience. I was asked to participate. Thank you for inviting me to this very interesting workshop. And I was asked to share our experience gained through the Marginette and Maelstrom project. So what I want to show you is the multi-level approach that we used, and our issues is marine litter. So so we have this experience. So we coordinated the Marginette project that went from January 2019 to December 2020, and the Marginette project was co-founded by the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. And after that, we managed to continue the work that was started with the Marginette project. It was quite a small project with a much larger H2020 project, which is called Maelstrom, that stays for marine litter sustainable removal and management. So the concept, though, it's common to the 2 projects. So we wanted to have a multi-level approach to the problem of marine litter, because we wanted to, first of all, you have to address the problem of where the litter is, and this we did with several methods, so mapping and modeling, and to know the marine litter hotspots are on the seafloor specifically, and so then we have to, of course, to face the problem of reducing, but then we also proposed a new, I will show you a new techniques to recycling marine litter, which is a very difficult material to recycle, and also we try to involve fishermen, stakeholders, and citizens. And we then we have come also to the point of legislation that I was mentioning before in our separate chat. So to really have a circular economy, so that we could really not only find, remove, and collect litter, but also recycle and put it in the market again. So this is exactly the concept was upscaled, so to say, to the Maelstrom project, where we also do identify, remove, and recycle are the main actions, but of course also the marketizing of the recycled products. So what we do more in the Maelstrom project is, of course, we have specifically we're specifically developing much more upgraded technologies, because of course in the Marginet project we did the removal through divers in coastal areas in Italy and Croatia, whereas in the Maelstrom project we have a specific development of large technologies, as for example the Maelstrom seabed cleaning platform, which is a platform that uses a robot really to clean the seafloor in coastal areas. And also we have instead we will deploy in the Porto region in Portugal a bubble barrier that will prevent the litter to enter the sea in a river close to Porto. So these are the two main technologies that are being developing here in Maelstrom, that will be ready that should be ready in June 2022, and we will start cleaning hopefully this summer, if there are no major we hope that there are no major problems that stops us to do that. So in the Marginet project, we had developed a low temperature pyrolysis prototype with our partner Synthol. That was a small enterprise, and it was very successful experiment, since we managed to really develop and test this prototype with an important amount of litter, not a lab experiment, but we provided 250 kilograms of not unprocessed, without pre-treatment material that was transformed into marine litter that had completely compliant with the ISO standards, and also reducing, actually we have made the estimation, reducing the amount of CO2 released in the atmosphere through this process. Of course, the marine gas oil is one of the possible products that the low temperature pyrolysis prototype can deliver. We are now trying to really explore the chemical route of recycling of marine litter. So from the naphtha to really produce new polymers and new, new material, even new plastics if needed. So from the very, very dirty marine litter that's collected, it's very difficult to be recycled. So in the Maelstrom project, we also upscaled this, experiment that we did in the Marginet project, and we have different type of recycling that have been explored by different companies that are involved in the Maelstrom project. And so also together with our partner Technalia, we will have a sorting robot based on artificial intelligence that will sort out the marine litter, and in order that we can really try to exploit as much as possible this kind of litter, and to develop the different type of recycling, and to recycle everything. So this is our aim in the end of the project. Of course, we did a lot of involvement. We did, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we managed to, you know, involve citizens. We did exhibitions. We had a lot of media attention, and we also made an agreement with local stakeholders here in Chioggia to demonstrate the prototype in the Marginet project that was successful. However, as I was mentioning before, you asked us what are the bottlenecks, what are the challenges. So we have the main challenge now at the moment is not even the funding, but is mostly the fact that the legislation still makes the cycle of marine litter rather difficult, because it's not really, there are not clear laws on this. It's first of all, you know, it's treated now at the moment, the marine litter is treated as a special waste in Italy. So you have to pay to, you know, to bring it back to the port and to recycle it. So it's not really clear. And then afterwards, it's also very difficult to have permits to develop new plants to recycle marine litter also in an alternative way. The technology, in fact, can be implemented only for small quantities for research purposes, because you know, if you start transporting a lot of litter, then you need also to have special permits to do that. Otherwise, it could be really, you could get really in trouble. So this is also you know, also legislative hindrance, so to say. The implementation in import areas need long-term engagement and investment by local stakeholders. And what I was mentioning before in our special, you know, separate room is that it's really difficult to get them to involve, because they are worried about the permits. They're worried about, you know, the the administrative work that is needed to do that. So they're really reluctant to uptake these technologies, although they're there, and you know, they could be really a solution. So we need really political support, if you want, and to change the legislation to be able to produce new resources from marine litter. So I hope that I summarized everything but please, thank you for your attention, and please ask me whatever you think it might be useful. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fantina. Again, if there's any questions, I suggest we use the chat function. And like I said, I'll leave a little bit of time at the end of the full presentations for quick questions and answers. So the next presentation we have is from Greening the Blue. I believe, Christina, you're presenting on behalf of the consortium.
Yes. Do you see my screen?
Yes, perfect. The floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, full screen then now. Okay, hello everyone. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to present here the Greening the Blue project. I'm Christina, and I'm speaking on behalf of Bound for Blue, which is the project coordinator of Greening the Blue project. I'll go through this index, so I'll give you a short overview of the project so you can know a little bit more about it. I'll explain a little bit more about our journey throughout the project, and also how Bound for Blue has evolved with this EU grant. Also the drivers and barriers to implement the project, our learnings, and the legacy of the project. Greening the Blue project is a project that was developed by three partners, Bound for Blue, Astander, and Lanitz, which I will explain later on who developed what thing inside the project. And what we've done is demonstrate and install a full-scale wind-assisted propulsion technology on a general cargo vessel, which is named Lana 1, in order to reduce the fuel use and the pollutants emissions of the shipping industry. The main objectives of these projects were obviously upscaling, customizing, and constructing this full-scale demonstration system and the control system, improvement of the materials, the installation of this technology on the vessel, and demo journeys in Europe and worldwide. The partners are Astander, Lanitz, and Bound for Blue, and Lanitz was in charge of improving materials and deploying materials from the aeronautical industry for the maritime industry, Aston was leading all the installation activities, and in Bound for Blue, we were leading all the technology side related to the wind sail system. The vessel is a quite particular vessel. It's owned by La Fura dels Baus. La Fura dels Baus, for you who might not know them, they are a theater company. They opened the ceremony of the Olympic Games in Barcelona, and they are going to perform a worldwide tour with their vessel. So to commemorate the 500 years of the first around the world trip. And our technology has been installed in that vessel. The journey, it started, the application, we started it in February 2018. The project was granted throughout 2018, but the project started in January 2019. We were focused on the design phase until April 2021, where we started the manufacturing that ended in November 2021. We transported the sail and we installed it and made the commissioning during December 2021, when the vessel started sailing with this technology. And obviously throughout the whole project, we've performed dissemination and commercialization activities. Obviously, it's for Bound for Blue, this project is not an aside project. It's part of a main strategy inside the company. And we've also gained other European Union funding throughout another project. And more recently, we have been awarded a European Union grant that will help us go to the commercialization stage. So scaling up the TRL. The main drivers that we've had in the project is that one is that it's not a commercial vessel. This is both a driver and not a driver. But in this case, the good part is that it doesn't have a strict schedule. So we are able to perform R&D activities without this commercial workload. The second one is that it has a wider visibility and communication, is a great communication platform because it's owned by a theater company, which will be sailing worldwide. And now, for instance, it's at the main port of Santander, the fishing port, and it's visible to all the people in the main city. So it's receiving a lot of dissemination throughout other channels, social media channels, such as Instagram, for instance, or Twitter. And it's also a good representative vessel for small general cargo vessel, which has been useful for us because we have been approached by other ship owners to know how this project is evolving and the results. And it was a good opportunity for us to improve our technology and to scale up. Regarding the barriers, this vessel is not going to be sailing a lot of their time. It's going to be basically performing shows. So the sea trials will have to be funded by Bound for Blue throughout the EU project and in parallel projects, so we can be able to gain enough data to release good, reliable results for this vessel. But also the good part is that we can sail in better good areas and in a more worldwide area, so we're able to provide results for the global maritime industry. So obviously it has these drivers and barriers at the same time. The theater vessel has specific requirements different than those of the market, and just bear in mind these performances from La Fura dels Baus with fireworks and with people on top. So we have to dimension the technology so that it's able to resist these requirements from the ship owner. And we've obviously experienced COVID impact, basically delays, raw material supply, teleworking from the team, which has made things difficult, and no physical events for dissemination. So basically the dissemination, when COVID impact hit it, we moved everything to online, and right now it's when things are starting to move. So the project will have further dissemination starting right now with the performances. The legacy of the project, this one I haven't put it here, but I think it's very obvious for us. It's being able to scale up the technology and right now be able to go to the full commercialization of the technology. It will have, obviously, this project does not end here. So the ship owner will also be in charge of showing the technology worldwide. And it will also have a wider visibility, not only for the industry, for the maritime industry, but for the European citizens. And the project is quite particular because it's not only a theater vessel, but it's also a laboratory for other projects to test the technologies on board. And in fact, the ship owner is participating in another European Union project, which has been financed by another entity from the European Union, and other companies will be able to deploy their technology there and test it in real conditions. And that's also very useful because it will also show our technology later on in the other one in parallel. So in this sense, the vessel will be sailing with other technologies and us will be installed there too. And that's all for me. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to solve them. And we obviously invite you to come sail with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. There's actually a question in the chat, and actually I had exactly the same question. How do you envisage the full commercialization? Am I right in saying that you haven't protected the intellectual property? You're willing to share it, is that right?
So we have a worldwide network of patents. We have from mechanisms to how it's working, the control. So you cannot patent what the concept of sailing, because that's been used for centuries, but you can patent a lot of things behind, and that's our main IP strategy. And how do we, in this full commercialization, we've been awarded by the EIC grant, which will help us go to the full commercialization. And we're right now closing also private funds to reach that level. So scaling up the technology, we've been able to deploy it in this vessel and another vessel, which is a fishing vessel that's been operating since last year, summer last year. So we've gaining a lot of insights from the technology. And throughout this year, we're scaling this technology, scaling it up, and we're installing it on a much larger representative type of vessels in the commercial segment. So vessels that are moving cargo right now, which is not a theater vessel, neither a fishing vessel. So that's how we're envisioning it, obviously closing agreements with other companies, helping us. We are an engineering company, we don't manufacture, neither install, so we are closing agreements for large scale manufacturing of our technology, also for installations and so on and so forth.
Great, thanks Christina. Congratulations on the IC, they're not easy to win, so well done. Great, we might move on to the next speaker again. If you have chats or you want to send Christina or the other speakers a direct message, go ahead. So the next presenter is Chiara, who's presenting ArcheoSub. Chiara, I have the floor.
Morning. Let me see if I can figure out how to give full screen.
Maybe down at the bottom right, so you can select.
Yeah. Yes. So good morning to everybody, and I'm Chiara Petrioli. I'm director and founding partner of WSense, and I've served as a European coordinator for the European Agency for SME EMFF Blue Lab project ArcheoSub. What I'm going to present is the activities that we have carried out after the project end to exploit what we call the Internet of Underwater Things, in addition to kind of summarizing the results of the ArcheoSub project. So when we started the project, we started from the observation that 7% of our planet is covered by water. It is key to provide food, mineral resources, energy for the future of humankind. And of course, we should develop a sustainable economy to exploit the resources of the sea while ensuring their preservation, as they're so connected to our future. However, in this part of the world, we are not able to develop wireless infrastructure that can allow us to get the data from the oceans, and we don't have the Internet of Things technology that are able to get the big data that allows scientists and policymakers to develop mitigation strategies for climate change, understand the impact of decision making, and even that would allow those industries working in the blue economy to develop sustainable but effective ways to advance the industrial sector. So we started from that, and what we have been doing in the last years from ArcheoSub actually has been to fill this gap and develop what was missing. So an underwater wireless infrastructure for the seas, oceans, and waterways, as well as low-cost, long-lasting, pervasive underwater IoT system that could finally bring the big data to support scientists and policymakers and industries in the sustainable green exploitation of ocean and seas resources. How did all start? It actually started from a European Agency for SME project, the EASME Archeosub project, which was a project we got funded in a Blue Lab call. So actually, in this, according to the Blue Lab objectives, young innovators, guys, you know, our young collaborators who had just got a PhD should be mentored by university experts and business development experts to grow and actually start also in the Blue Lab, you know, spin-off or even SMEs that could scale up. And because of that, in the Archeosub project, there were two groups that were successful in FP7 projects, had developed interesting underwater robotics, so underwater drone technologies, so on underwater wireless mesh networking and IP patents, had resulted in innovations in FP7 projects that had gone into the innovation radar by the European Commission. And they had, you know, a lot of young people part of these research labs of Italian universities that were willing to really have an impact and translate into this research innovation into market-ready solutions. And we basically, these two teams joined forces and they were cited by business developer experts. And this was creating the mentoring program at the core of the Blue Lab project. So what was the objective of the Blue Lab project? It was actually starting to spin off in this way exploiting the Blue Lab. And we had an objective which was in line with the call, that was that of bringing underwater robotics and underwater IoT to the next level, at the same time answering clear needs that had been shared to us by policymakers, actually the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage, as well as the Israel Antique Authority, coming from the need to be able to support the discovery, monitoring, surveillance, as well as valorization of underwater cultural heritage. And this was one of the targets of the call, and it was a perfect actual example because of time, there was the need to push to the limit in terms of low cost, easy to use by non-expert users of these kind of technologies. So this was the technological framework within which we actually performed these activities, different teams coming from communication, signal processing, networking, as well as robotics coming together and developing these novel technologies. So the Archeosub target innovation was the development of Zeno, a low-cost underwater AUV, that is depicted in these pictures. And as part of the Zeno, WSense, this was developed by MDM team, one of the spin-off created. And as part of the Zeno, there was actually a general purpose module developed instead by WSense that allowed to process the information like the video camera data and create underwater wireless mesh networks, so communicating in real-time compressed information like underwater pictures from the Zeno. And this module was instead developed by WSense, who was also developing the underwater IoT, underwater sensor network, able to communicate information in real time. And this information were used to, were things like, basically data on the water quality from the underwater cultural heritage marine park where we deployed the technology, as well as some compressed information we could gather from external video cameras that could be transmitted through the underwater wireless network in real time. And we use the same infrastructure also to support acoustic navigation to the robot, as well as localization of divers operating in the site. And actually, we also developed a system where everything could be connected: underwater sensor, underwater robots operating in the system, as well as divers that could be localized, and they could even chat with each other through an underwater WhatsApp and chat with those on the surface in order to also be sure that they were safe, and they could also request, for instance, particular instruments because these divers were underwater archaeologists. So at the end of the project, we had developed first prototypes of all these technologies. We had to go further on in the direction of miniaturizing the assets, bringing them to industrial grade, being able to actually bring them to the market. But we had prototypes, and we had met the requirements expressed by the end users, so the ministries dealing to actually manage underwater cultural heritage preservation. And we had been able to pilot these technologies in Caesarea, so in Israel, and in Italy. So what happened after the project? First of all, what was the impact that was achieved in terms of hiring of new people, scale up of the companies in the last 3 years after the end of the project? In MDM, they have developed the Zeno AUV, then also got into different directions, and they sold 3 of these AUVs and hired 4 extra people. In WSense, we really went into the direction of industrializing and bring to the ultimate level in different sectors this underwater IoT concept, underwater wireless mesh infrastructure. And this has led, also thanks to other funds, to a very large development. The company has grown to over 40 people, offices in Italy, Norway, and UK in 3 years. When the first people hired was exactly at the beginning of the Arcosoup project. And in December 2021, we finally, thanks also to support by Ian and support by Blue Invest Coaching, we were able to get the first round of investment for a very significant scale up that is envisioned for the next few years. Also, in 2021, WSense was able in different sectors, like the energy sector, to sign global partnership with leading stakeholders. So what are other kind of targets that we achieved during the Arcosoup project? First of all, I think it was super useful for everything we have achieved in terms of scaling up of the associated company later on to have this contamination that was part of the Blue Lab concept among different groups with different backgrounds. For instance, the robotic group from MDM team got to know things that they're exploiting now with new robots they are developing, like how to compress and transmit information in real time. WSense has entered through the project the underwater robotic field, and today the general purpose module that was first developed for the Zeno has been brought also to other players, also larger players in the underwater robotic community, and is part, for instance, of a concept that has been strengthened also in terms of performance and data rate, and that now is into industrial grade robots that are going to be used for future autonomous residence systems, implementing the reduction of operation and maintenance costs, for instance, of offshore renewables. So we could really use this to grow a multidisciplinary team. The young innovators that have been involved in the Blue Lab, they have really fast developed their careers. They are in core position in the two SMEs, but some of them have left actually these SMEs, and they successfully develop a management career in large industries in the blue economy sector. Impact on policymakers. WSense, after the Arcosoup project, won a European bid to monitor for several years different marine parks in Italy, for instance. And that was part of Synergy and the bid managed by the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage. WSense won other bids and contracts on for monitoring through underwater IoT, underwater cultural heritage sites, also by Lazio region. And in these sites we were also exploiting the system we had developed for divers towards underwater cultural heritage valorization. These results have been introduced by Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage in policies, so in expert groups at the European level as a best practice, also to support mitigation of climate change effects on underwater cultural heritage. And the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage, MIC, in this slide, also brought these results on to COP26 as a best practice, and both WSense and MDM team are showcasing at the Expo in Dubai.
Hi, Chiara, it's very interesting, but do you mind just trying to close up if possible?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We had implementation of this concept also to other kind of sector through another European Agency for SME project. We have a Blue Economy pilot project. We have brought a follow-up of these technologies to aquaculture, digitalizing aquaculture. And as I explained, the networks of underwater robots that was piloted in Arcosub enter into market-ready solution brought to the energy sector and to actually European Defense Fund also. So here you see basically that a bit what are the components of the system and the water nodes that are connected to any sensor for water quality monitoring, for structural monitoring in the environment, and through an underwater mesh networks, a multi-hop to a gateway, and from a gateway to a cloud, it's possible to get in real time in situ continuous data from the oceans, and in the reverse direction sent from remote commands that through the gateway reach the different sensor nodes and change the application logic, the alarm threshold, what to monitor, when. This is what we have done. And this is market ready now, 3 years after, and brought to different sectors and led to the scale up of the solution. So what did we actually learn through this process? Well, first of all, scaling up a deep tech company, starting from a European project, is quite a challenging task. And I selected this picture because I think that people also matter. So you need to be fully committed, and you need to actually cope with a lot of challenging aspects. First of all, it's not research. You need to have technologies that fulfill real needs. So you need to talk to a lot of people, understanding users, and the company needs to be strong because it's a small company that can start from research and from spin-off in these European projects, and at the edge to be selected by large stakeholders and start scaling up. Access to finance in this process is actually critical. There are a lot of blocking wheels, but even if European Investment Bank and EIF have provided very valuable solutions, they are sometimes not known to companies and to SMEs. So I think this sharing of information, which we, for instance, successfully managed to get access to through European Enterprise Network, is actually a core aspect. I think the availability of funds for piloting, even if they're small scale, consider the overall funds we got for Seastar and for Arcosub was, I think, less than 1.5 million, and we were able to develop a lot of market-ready solutions. So I don't think it's so important to get large grants, but it is important that SMEs get grant to pilot with end users their technologies. I think it's important because ultimately, if you want to have impact, if you want to bring these solutions to the market, you have to promote that SMEs really go towards the challenging path to bring to industrial solution, changing the mindset, going to the market, their own solution. So this is really something that you can do with projects at ITRL. People matter. You need to have a passionate team that is willing to keep trying and learn that every failure is bringing you extra knowledge to be able to succeed. Another aspect I want to stress is that there is a really lack of investment in the blue economy, despite the Blue Invest. I got Blue Invest coaching. This was critical to get access actually to funding, but there is still lack of investors in the blue economy sector, and there is lack of investors in the European area on deep tech. Okay, basically a lot of investors, even if they're co-funded or they're supported by European Commission that they risk their investment, they do not really want to risk, okay, towards disruptive technologies. So everything that the European Commission is doing in this direction, getting access to more and more deep tech, to EIB funds is really crucial. And the biggest challenge is simply communicating, letting all of us end users, different startups know what we can offer and also the needs, and trying to create synergies and scale up, not at the single country level, but at the European level in line with the European digital single market. Thanks.
Thanks, Chiara. Lots of interesting information there, and we will share the slides with permission from the speakers so you can reflect on that. So thank you very much. We're going to move swiftly on because we're a little bit behind time to our last speaker, which is Sylvia, who's going to present AfriMed. And then, like I said, I hope we can find time for the discussion. So Sylvia, if you want to share your screen.
Oh, no, mi si è bloccato tutto.
Oh, no.
Oh my God. See? My laptop is completely blocked. I'm sorry. I'm trying to share my screen.
Well, we have a backup, I think.
Oh, okay. No, here I am. Okay, I can see you all.
Okay, you're right. Hold on.
I'm putting the presentation in free screen.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm here on behalf of the AfriMed Consortium and on behalf also of Roberto Danovaro, who is the coordinator of the project. Let's start with the problem faced by AfriMed project. AfriMed is dedicated to ecosystem restoration, so we are trying to fight against habitat and biodiversity loss, particularly in coastal ecosystems, because they provide biodiversity and a lot of ecosystem services, both directly and indirectly. But particularly also in the Mediterranean Sea, but also in all European seas, we are facing really worrying levels of biodiversity loss and habitat loss. So the AfriMed project is conducted by 11 partners, based not only in European countries, but also in extra EU countries such as Tunisia, Morocco, and Albania. The general aim of the project is to identify the status of the coastal ecosystems, and in particular those dominated by macroalgae belonging to a specific group, which is the Cystoseira, which form the most productive ecosystems along the Mediterranean coast, and to develop shared approach and protocols in order to put in action concrete restoration actions with a similar approach at a basin scale. Then we are also trying to analyze the effect of the restoration, the feasibility, and the successes, the measure that we can apply to measure the success and the effect of the restoration. And also we are trying also to develop a socio-economic partnership in order to make our result most effective as possible. The journey of the project started more or less 5 years ago with another project, which was Mercy's, just finished. It was an Horizon 2020 project dedicated to several typologies of marine ecosystems. Then AfriMed focused specifically on ecosystems dominated by Cystoseira macroalgae. Both projects have a strong collaboration with the Society for Ecological Restoration, both the European but also a world level, in the framework of the decade dedicated by the UN to ecosystem restoration. And then also we have a strong collaboration with other projects dedicated to marine conservation and restoration, such as the Mediterranean Biodiversity Protection Community. The AfriMap project, the results of the AfriMap project led us to participate to other European or national initiatives. We are just past the first step of the Biodiversity Plus call, and we are writing the full proposal to go on in this kind of research. And also at national level, for example, we are participating. We are in charge for ecological restoration in the Italian seas in the National Plan for Resilience after the COVID pandemic. The project, sorry, started in 3 years ago, and now we will finish the project at the end of the 2022. We had 1 year more due to the pandemic. The main results, first of all, we mapped the status of this kind of coastal ecosystems at a basin scale, and we obtained analyze the stressors that have a strong impact on the natural forests. The second main result is obtaining spatial prioritization at the basin scale to select, to identify the best suitable areas to be dedicated to the ecological restoration. And this was obtained, analyzed both historical and present data with the support of models. Then we set up a roadmap for the restoration of Mediterranean macroalgal forests. In this sense, we set common shared approaches and protocols at the basin scale, and also we analyzed the costs related to the effectiveness and the success of this intervention. Other important result is the implementation of standardized approaches and protocols that have been shared by your partners. So now, across the Mediterranean Sea, a lot of countries are able to restore their coastal ecosystems. And the next step in this last year is to analyze also the drivers of restoration, which can give the difference between success or an insuccess of the interventions, and this will be made by joint experiment by your partner. Then another results that we had is the stakeholder engagement. This was made by a business club, which is a dedicated part of the website. It's a portal dedicated to the stakeholders, in which a stakeholder can share their experiences and can talk among them, and talk also with researchers to have a continuous feedback on this topic. Then we will have the second stakeholder meeting in May, during which we will also work also with stakeholders to give the best practices. During the project, we paid a huge effort also to raise awareness on the ecological restoration. We organized several different 2 symposia at international congresses. We built a network among researchers, not only dedicated to this specific kind of ecosystem, but in general, people who are working on ecosystem restoration. And we produced also a lot of material to share our knowledge. And being an academian entity, we are also involving a lot of young people, such as our students, to grow up a new generation with the strong knowledge on these topics. What we need more, for sure, as mentioned previously by other colleagues, we need the legislation. particularly in Italy. We need, but also in other countries, both European and non-European, we need legislation specifically dedicated to foster ecosystem restoration. And another thing, in my opinion, is also we need to foster the interaction with the investors, particularly those from the private sector, because maybe sometimes they cannot directly and immediately catch the opportunities that they could have in this kind of interventions. That's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Thank you very much to the presenters for your presentations on projects. I suppose this workshop and this session is really about the flow as well, the flow of knowledge and the use of different funding mechanisms along the way. So maybe I will just put the floor out to any of the Coherence panel. Obviously, I think catching on my notes, we had obviously EMFF funding, but we've also, I've heard of EIC, H2020 projects, LIFE, some leading to Horizon Europe. So I just put the floor to the the Coherence panel. Would you like to make any reflections from your funding program point of view related to the projects and in particular that flow of knowledge across funding mechanisms? If you want to just unmute your microphone and turn on your camera if you'd like to say anything. Or is anyone from SENEA or DG Mare in terms of the EMFF angle on these projects?
If I may, David, I wanted to ask regarding greening the blue in particular. Thank you very much for the presentations. If before greening the blue you had other EU funding, I think it was Alexandra presenting for greening the blue, yeah, and maybe someone from Horizon 2020 would like to make a comment on the link between Marginet and Maelstrom, or Merces and Afrimed, if colleagues are around, or I could ask a couple of questions.
So I think one of the questions was for me. Our first European Union grant was from EMFF, so now Synergies. And we had different grants, but the regional grants. So specifically from the Catalonian government and from the government of Cantabria, as well as the government of Spain, throughout different programs, not only public funding, but also like convertible loans and so on. So we received support at the regional level, not that much European when we were granted the project. And then later on, that was also like a booster for other European Union funding to complement in our scaling up and in the TRL development.
Okay, so I understand that this first EMFF grant was useful for you to get the next level, the EIC accelerator grant. I don't know if Ted, you're around, or if you want to ask or make a comment regarding EIC accelerator.
Yes, sorry, I didn't know how to unmute. Yes, so the IC Accelerator is here to help companies to really push to go to market, to really scale up. So the novelty with the IC Accelerator is that we not only do the grant part, we also invest in the company with equity.
Yeah, I would like to add that I'm not sure if I said EIC grant, but it's blended options. So we're getting both grant and both investment. So I'm not sure if I mentioned that because of speaking quickly, but yeah, totally aligned with that. That's what we've been awarded, but we are starting right now. So that was end of 2021. So.
And Christina, can I ask you, how many times did you have to apply before you managed to get through the process?
For the EIC?
Yes.
So in the last, so this EIC was like the first time with this program and the artificial intelligence platform. So this was our first time, but before, for the last like phase 2 project, which would be like equivalent, we applied like around 10 times, maybe. I'm just guessing because it's something my colleague did, but I would say around 10 times. One up, one down. It's a lot of times. But I think it arrived at the right moment. So maybe it was right that they said no the other times. We always got like the seal of excellence. We were like just some number below, but they're really out of that. But then we got it last time, and I think it was really aligned by the end of the Thynea project and first development of the technology and deployment on real scale units on vessels. And that now going to a larger market representative type of vessels in the commercial side with bigger ship owners. So it's fully aligned. So that was good, yeah.
Okay, and maybe, sorry, Charlotte, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just to mention that, I mean, the system works, then it's when you're mature enough that it finally works.
Yeah, I suppose that was a question, because obviously if you think about the investment cost in applying for funding and obviously the time delay if you're not successful, that's obviously creates a bit of a gap in the funding. And I suppose an experience from us is that we helped an SME apply for EIC, but we also applied for EMFF at the same time. And whilst we weren't successful in EIC, which is sometimes more focused towards technology and health, we were successful in EMFF because it was dedicated to blue. So you're only competing with blue. So it's quite interesting that it was a great enabler for that company where they struggled almost in the same application to get funding through EIC because of the competition rates and the openness of the call. So it was just an observation. Any other experiences from the people who just presented in terms of flowing from funding mechanisms, different funding mechanisms? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your journey? And then I'll come to Vincenzo, who has his hand up. No? Okay, well, I'll move to Vincenzo. Your hand up, Vincenzo?
Yes, thank you. I just have a reflection and maybe a question for Fantina as a coordinator of Marginet Maelstrom. Because Marginet was a small project with a small budget and very few partners. And now she's the coordinator of a bigger project on the Horizon 2020 with more partners, a bigger budget. But I was wondering if these kind of projects that were funded within the EMFF, like Marginet and others that were presented today in this event, were somehow, I wouldn't say necessary, but very useful to get then larger projects within Horizon 2020 or other funding schemes. Or if going directly to big projects like Maelstrom would have been possible even without passing through these smaller projects like Marginet. That was somehow linked also to the question of David on the funding flows. So that was a little bit of a reflection that I would like also to that Fantina would maybe clarify. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I believe that, I mean, in our case, it was essential to have a Marginet project first, because we also managed to also, I mean, I think Marginet project was a real perfect project with a small budget, few partners, so easy to handle, but you know, also the helped us to get to understand what were the problems to be addressed in this field of the marine litter, and so also to go afterwards to build a consortium that was bigger, of course, with bigger budget, but also, you know, to develop new technologies. I think for us it was absolutely essential to have this first step, so to do a small action and then you know, then to really try to upscale to a bigger action and to involve you know, other European countries, not only Italy and Croatia, but you know, to go higher, to go in a broader extent geographically as well, like not only from the technology point of view. I think I think this scheme, it was a pity that it was not renewed for after, you know, the second, after that round. I think it was just dedicated to small enterprises. But I think, you know, it's very useful also to have a research institute in the consortiums, because they have, you know, as I said, a broader view on the project, on the problems, and they can help, you know, to be also, there can be of a good connection through small enterprises to get to the real environmental challenges that we are facing. So I think it was really useful anyway, like to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Fantina.
So I'm going to suggest a slight change to the approach for this last session. So rather than go into breakout, I think we will just stay in plenary, because I think it's useful for everyone to share and listen to some of the Coherence Panel and some of the other projects and initiatives. So like I said, I continue to see if the Coherence Panel have any comments or reflections from the funding system side. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment at this stage? No? Okay, well then we also have a couple of other projects that I've invited to give some reflections based on the fact that they are Horizon 2020 coordination and support actions tasked with trying to connect the dots and link things and make things work. So we have Sophia, who is from FCT in Portugal, who is representing the Anchor project, which is an Atlantic initiative. Maybe Sophia, maybe you just set the scene on your project and maybe any reflections you have.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation, David, and hello to everyone. So my name is Sophia Cordeiro, and I'm coordinating the Anchor project that is supporting the implementation of a science diplomacy project or initiative, sorry. There it's the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance funded. It started with the Aora project, the Atlantic Ocean Research Coordination and Support Action, back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And well, we have been we were the project that followed up this first project. This first project was targeting the North-North cooperation. In ocean research and innovation, the second project, but also looking at the synergies and linkages with the North-North cooperation. So mainly, we really, the aim is to come up with joint pilot actions. So really focusing on synergies of what is going out there, connecting the dots, gluing different initiatives across and along the Atlantic Ocean, mainly focusing the South, but
sorry, Sophia, your sound is breaking up a little, so maybe
also engaging what was already being.
Sorry, Sophia, your
like
sound is...
this, it's better.
I'm not sure if it's broadband, so maybe if you don't mind turning off your camera, but continue to speak, and hope maybe that will improve the sound.
Okay, I will also put this near. Okay, I think do you hear better now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so sorry for that. So I was saying Anchor is really supporting a science diplomacy initiative. So I think it's one of the project that it's being very directed by the European Commission. We had a huge support from DG RTD as well as from REA. And this support it's proving very important ambition. And one of the things that I believe it has really worked very well regarding synergies and clustering among projects is that in the call funded our CSA plus other 3 research and innovation projects. And all of us were really obliged to promote synergies among our projects, as well as other projects and initiatives that were already out there. And in fact, some of the projects have worked together and formed a clustering group of project managers. where we share best practices on the implementation of our projects, where we share best practices on the connection of stakeholders that have very different cultures from the European. So we are speaking about South America and African stakeholders mainly. And it is very important to create a connection here and a sense of confidence. And the sharing of these best practices has been very important, as well as we try to share ideas on how we can, based on the activities that we have funded or that we are being funded to implement, to share synergies. And here I would like to point out the flexibility of the Research Executive Agency, so here, which has been very important in order to accommodate whatever changes are needed in the project implementations in order to reach this bigger aim, because all of us are working for the same policy umbrella. So this was one of the things that I would like to highlight is clustering groups among similar projects. The second thing that I think it's very important, and also thinking on the sustainability of what we are doing, is that not only co-design should be developed with external stakeholders to the projects, but also co-implementation, because projects end. And it's very important that there are other institutions. So in our project, we are providing seed funding to glue existing initiatives to reach a common goal. And this common goal is in the form of joint pilot actions. And these joint pilot actions involve some stakeholders of the project, so beneficiaries of the project, but mainly institutions that are external to the project that have contributed to the co-design of these joint activities. And this will allow us to sustain what is being developed. The third point I would like to raise is, and it could contribute very much to this knowledge flows efficiency that we have heard before, it's that we could have one-stop shop portals, even for basins or for thematic areas, where we have in a single place the relevant research, the relevant innovation that is important to implement the European ambition. Of course, giving visibility to outcomes and the results, because sometimes we see databases that are relevant for everyone that after 5-10 years are no longer alive, and they should be alive because there is a lot of work out there, and these should be kept alive to have sustainability. And the fourth thing that I would like to reflect on, it's the communication. We have heard already that communication is very important, and it is indeed. And also linked to the emotional gap that we have been heard from the mission board. This emotional gap can really be overcome with the strong communication strategies, not only at the project levels, but we really need to go beyond it, maybe to a strategic level where, for example, in Anchor, we have been asked by the Commission not to develop a website for the project, but really a website that represents the whole cooperation. Similar to the website the visual identity. So if you go to the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance website, you will see that we barely use it. We use it mainly the Alliance visual identity, really showing up that everything is connected, is coherent, there is a line of activity. So maybe we could have some these policy strategies. They could have some logos that all the projects could use and really showcase the linkage of what all of us are doing. And this would be my last point. So synergies that are really an obligation, having clustering groups co-design, but also co-implementation with external stakeholders, one-stop shop portals to guarantee the knowledge flows efficiently, and strong communication strategy that allow a sustained visual identity. Thank you.
That's great, Sophia. Some great reflections. I think we lost you a little bit on the sound, but I mean, I'm getting my notes. You know, this idea of clustering projects and live projects, the idea of flexibility on implementation, understanding things change over time, the idea of co-design and co-implementation, and potential to seed fund pilot actions both within the project or with external actors. This idea of a one-stop shop portal and the communication, and moving away from project-based websites to kind of activity or initiative-based areas, perhaps, for efficiency and for clustering. So thank you so much. I might just move on to the next one, which is Rosa Fernandez, who is one of the work package leaders on the Columbus project, which I was involved in as well. And maybe, Rosa, if you just don't mind just setting the scene on the Columbus project and any reflections you have that are relevant to this discussion of this pathway of knowledge from your side.
Sure, thank you, David. Yes, well, the Columbus initiative was some kind of, I think, quite a bit of a game changer in the knowledge management around projects, because it was a large initiative on knowledge transfer where many partners collaborated for 3 years. Trying to look at what was coming out from research and innovation projects on the marine and maritime realm. Mostly there were research and innovation funded by FP7, some of them by FP6, but the focus that we tried to use and the approach we used was not that much on the what the projects were about. That was of course relevant, but what was the outcome from that project? What sort of outputs we got from that bunch of projects? And I fully endorse all the comments by Sophia, because most of the lessons that she has shared were things that we also found out during the implementation of Columbus. Maybe if I had to add something, I would say that one of the things that we found more useful is that probably when, well, it's important to carry out this sort of analysis approach, this sort of approach to what is expected from a project, what is coming out from a project, and once that project has ended, what is the potential impact of these outcomes. So there is some need from our, I think from our perspective, there is need to provide some support, to set some support in place so that you can do this follow-up before, during, and after. And it's also relevant because, well, projects evolve since they are the moment when they are formulated, when they are proposals, until when they finally get their results. And it also happens that within the project, you may have a perspective. If you talk to the knowledge owners, normally they have their vision on what they have produced, but when someone else comes in with a perspective as an outsider, normally you can enrich the analysis, and you can see that sometimes something that you were trying to obtain to, for example, to have an industrial or an entrepreneurial exploitation, you can also find out that it can be very useful also for a policy implementation, or that it can definitely have an impact in the education sector or for any other societal needs. So I think it's also important that this support can help the people that is more directly linked to the work that is going on in a project to think out of the box and broaden the perspective so that then the possibilities for exploitation are wider. And these ideas about the necessity of or the need for clustering, I think these are very, very valuable, because it's also quite difficult when you are within a project to be able to dedicate sufficient efforts to understand what's going on in similar areas and to really foster cooperation. I mean, you can be recommended to do that, but if you don't have the necessary support to do that, it's not that easy. So from my perspective, the instrument of the coordination and support actions is really very valuable in the, let's say, funding landscape. And it would be very nice that this sort of pre, during, and after initiatives could be implemented, and also that they can do this sort of work cross-cuttingly, connecting projects that are funded under different programs. But this is also because this will probably also enrich the conclusions. And I think when you carry out this sort of work with this sort of perspective, it's not only valuable for those generating the outcomes and owning the outcomes, but also for the whole community, and even for the sake of the policies, because it's the way when we can, from an outside perspective, you can see the whole picture working, and I think this is valuable.
Thanks, Rosa. Excellent reflections, building upon Sophia's comments. I mean, I think you're right. The idea of this meta knowledge management system is quite interesting if we're trying to make sure that we have efficiency in the flow of knowledge across mechanisms to bring it towards those impacts and solutions in the field. So thank you very much. I just had a question for Marginet and Afrimed. I mean, have you had links with LIFE? Because obviously LIFE is an interesting program more related to the environment, but obviously in the new framework program, it's gone up to 5 billion. So it's a massive initiative linked to the Green Deal. So I'm just wondering, did your projects have a link to LIFE, or was there LIFE funding involved, or either you would like to answer that?
Yes, I can answer to this question. In fact, CNR was also lead partner of the LIFE Ghost project. It was the first project. It really involved, about collecting and mapping and collecting ghost nets on the seafloor. So certainly we also had this experience, and it was also crucial to develop, to write Marginet, because we capitalized on what we have done before. So we certainly had that, but yeah, we also have applied for a new LIFE now, a bigger one at the med scale. But I mean, I must say that the LIFE projects are very challenging in terms of preparation of the proposals. So it's really, in comparison with other programs, they are much more challenging. But we'll see if this proposal will go through the LIFE. Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina. And Sylvia, from your side?
In our case, we tried with the LIFE proposal, with the LIFE call, but the project don't pass the selection. I think that the involvement of the public administration wasn't strong enough.
Sure, yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, I have the same experience with LIFE. It's a very challenging process and quite a different mechanism. but I would say that probably marine is a little bit undersubscribed compared to what it could be. I think in Ireland we only had 3 projects involved in life with a marine focus, so it's quite a low subscription relatively. So Solon, I see your
if I can add,
sorry, yeah, sure.
Can I add just a comment? Maybe in the restoration actions, we need to work more in collaboration and coordination with the marine strategy and the maritime special planning. Also to involve the public administration, because they really have strong, I don't know, conflict sometimes with other activities at sea.
Understood. Okay, thank you. A life intervention, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it might be necessary. Indeed, now we're joining the e-grants tools. You're going to find out that life is a bit different than previously, but indeed, life has its specificities. It's an independent program like EMFF from Horizon, so we look at different things, and our focus is on the environment. And this is what makes the difference. I hear a lot about innovation. I see a lot of research institutes. We don't do research in life. Life maximum 6 months of research. If we see more than 6 months of research in the proposal, it's out, because that means your focus is more on innovation. So we will send the applicant mostly to Horizon or somewhere else. For us, the importance is to see the impact, see the numbers on the impact, see the key performance indicators on what's the impact on the water, what's the impact on the CO2, what's the impact on waste, what's the impact on marine litter. And from that point of view, this is what we're looking at. So obviously we have a different focus, and we want to see the public authorities coming in. And hence we don't ask for cooperation. We're not here to make cooperation between countries. Yes, we give a bonus, but it's not essential for us. You can come as a single applicant in life, as long as you know what you're doing and you're going to have your impact. Now, from the point of view also the marine environment is in different aspects of life program. I'm, for example, doing the marine innovation for the blue, but there's aspects of it into the nature. So when we look at biodiversity, ecosystem services, etc., it's all under the nature part of life. There's climate. So for example, when I see about the different ecosystem services, one of it is carbon sequestration. That comes under the climate part of life. So within the program itself, we have multiple areas where people could go. It's the same thing with other big programs. You have multiple areas where you could apply. Even there, for example, we are doing our best inside life to be able to ensure that we are coordinated and we know what the left and the right is doing within a single program. Imagine multiple programs. But I do understand some of the points raised about needing to simplify, for example, in life, for sure. And we're working on that, but you can't oversimplify, otherwise you lose the focus.
Thank you, that's very useful information. And am I right in saying that the funding ratios have changed slightly in the new program for life, or is there better funding ratios for the grant side?
No, it's about the same. It's about the same. What we have increased significantly in some cases, if you're applying for certain species, for example, in nature, you get a lot bigger funding. But this comes to the point of what life is. Life is de-risking. Don't come with just simple, for example, university. You will find it hard, because after the life program, then what? If you're a company, we give you 60–55% nil, that's for like a grant, so that we help you to de-risk your technology before you're going to jump into the market thinking that, well, you have to share the risk, because we are expecting that afterwards you're going to get funded from the market. But if you're a long way from the market, then life, obviously, with its smaller funding rate, is not that adequate. So this is where it's important to have a multiple stakeholder engagement in a life project, whether it's the end user, the technology provider, even the authorities coming in. Okay?
Great, thank you very much for that. Very interesting. What I might just do now is I'm just going to share screen. We're not going to go into another breakout, as I said, but we do have 2 prompt questions. So what I suggest is if we share the link again in chat to the Jamboard, and as we're talking, if any of you want to put in any comments or responses in the Jamboard whilst we're talking, you're more than welcome, or maybe that can prompt some discussion as well. Obviously, some people prefer to write than to do it. So I'm just going to share the screen just to give you the prompt questions, and then we'll come back to the discussion. So I'll just show you this quickly. So there's two questions we were trying to tackle in this last session. So how do we ensure the valuable knowledge results from completed projects are further developed in follow-on project initiatives, and that flow of knowledge across TRLs or policy relevant levels to get to solutions that make a difference on the ground? And then also, how do we ensure knowledge results are applied at scale to have an impact? Like I said, to hit the targets that are being set by the mission, for example, requires not just a proven solution, but a scale across sea basins and across Europe. So we need to think about what kind of stakeholders need to be mobilized. Like Solon said there, where do you go from a research and maybe a Horizon Europe into implementation and impacts, measurable impacts on climate or nature or biodiversity inside a life project? So thinking about how the flow of knowledge at the same time with stakeholders who are incentivized to take knowledge to scale. So like I said, we've shared the link of the Jamboard, and if we all just work in the first Jamboard, let's call it breakout room 1, and you're more than welcome to throw comments in there. But whilst we're doing that, I suggest we keep chatting here. Charlotte, I see your hand up, and then I'll come to Chiara. Charlotte?
Yes, hi, David, thank you. I wanted to ask, because I mean, Sophia's presentation about the anchor and the experience of Columbus are very interesting also, and nice insights. I wanted to ask if, I mean, some colleagues from DG Research or from the Research Executive Agency, which were mentioned as, I mean, key enablers also in those projects to help and assist, wanted to provide a reaction or a comment about that.
Well, if I may, maybe I can come in. I'm Gonzalo García Arbolella. I'm working in the REA in project officer for Anchor and for all the projects at the regional seas, dealing with coordination and support action, dealing with the implementation of the strategic research and innovation agenda. So I mean, if I can comment on Sophia's feedback, I think it was a really interesting one thing that she mentioned, that the key success, for example, for the Atlantic Alliance is that there was, in the topic of Horizon 2020, there was under one topic different subtopics, and one of them was a coordination and support action that was really trying to implement the values of the Belém statement, and the initiative for the Atlantic strategy. And then there were also research and innovation actions or subtopics where other research and innovation projects were implemented, all of them in the same core topic. So there was a coordination and support action with a more policy strategy orientation, and then there were some projects on research and innovation, and talking about quite a big and substantial project of more than 13 million euros each of them. Really working on research and innovation on the Atlantic. So this framework, I think, helps a lot to projects to create synergies. So I see a very unique case with the Atlantic Alliance and with this topic that it was funded a few years ago for a couple of years, topic that it was repeated in the work program of Horizon 2020, where synergies has been created, and also it's because of this framework. But of course, we are talking about an initiative and an alliance with the Atlantic project, so that is not applicable to all the cases, but it's very interesting. It works very fantastically well, yeah, it's a good case. And my second maybe reflection about what Sophia's comment, for example, it's I think projects they do work very well in synergies. They fail sometimes in create synergies with other programs, so they work a bit more with synergies. For example, in my case, I'm working more Horizon 2020, and synergies between projects on Horizon 2020 with similar research activities. They do create some synergies. We really, from REA, for example, and from other executive agencies, I'm sure too, we really try to create these synergies also, and to implement synergies through specific tasks within the project. But maybe one thing that they can fail a bit more is about thinking about the legacy of the project. And I think it's something that's not really embedded in the project implementation. So what's going to be the legacy of the project? I mean, at the end of the project, what are you going to provide? What are going to be the stakeholders you're going to be implementing, and what will be the tools that you can give for next coming projects? Either if it's going to be you or the consortium or part of the consortium because you are applying to other topics that are related, or other institutions and universities or research organization that can apply the impact and the outcome of your project. And I think this legacy, it's not always very thought out, and is not very well communicated either, if in those cases that it's a part of the project. I'm now trying to in most of my projects to make a consortium aware of the legacy of the project, and maybe to implement as part of a task in some of their communication and dissemination work packages if they didn't visit at the proposal stage. So.
Thank you, Gonzalo, for your intervention there. That's great. Chiara, I see your hand is up.
Yes, if you like, I have some comments on both the two questions you shared. So to me, first of all, it would be very interesting if there could be somehow the setup, in addition to physical meetings that hopefully we will be able to start doing again, but of a kind of a platform or some way to connect the coordinators in order to share most information. One of the things that it is clear to me every time I participate to this kind of meeting, that have a limited view of the needs and ongoing projects. And I know by experience that despite we communicated, we went to media, we went to BBC, we went to RAI and so on, still, for instance, few people know about the possibilities offered by the novel technologies developed in our projects. So, I mean, these communication aspects, maybe with a way to connect the coordinators in a faster way, would be very important. Just to make an example, in Italy, we have a network of innovative SMEs. And for instance, the CEO are linked by WhatsApp group. So sometimes something very simple allows to connect. And in this case, there is no link in terms of synergies, it's just a sharing of information. So I'm sure that it's possible to do something there, and it would be, I think, very needed to create synergies. For what regards the other question on what is needed to scale up, I would like to share my experience. I think there is a very serious issue related to how scale up of companies, of technological companies in particular, deep tech companies, B2B companies can happen in Europe. There are great instruments offered by the European Commissions like EIC, but they are super selective, okay? Which means that I've looked at the numbers, and in Italy, I think 2 proposals made through out of 400. Okay, even if I have the greatest idea and I'm trying to scale up a company, with this selection process, I would not go for that. Okay, because it is a potential waste of time, whatever I do, even the greatest proposal. So it is too selective. So as you know, that I've mentioned before, I don't think that to change the European economy to match policymakers' needs, user needs with great technologies, we need necessary to give a huge amount of money. In many cases, however, it has to be something that really meets the needs of the companies at different stages. So I think the major problem is once you have a given size, to go up, to scale up to, I don't know, 10 of million euro of revenues. That is the main challenge in Europe today. And they say it after trying for 1.5 years and finally managed to be funded. Okay, but it was very, very hard because actually no VC, despite they have a lot of the risking, they wanted, they say, all great, but you know, it's B2B, it's deep tech, you know, we don't really understand this market. It's not another app or so on. So they don't risk And this is an issue. And then there is all this huge amount of fund you can get through the EIC, but it's too competitive. So I think, you know, there could be different options. One is to provide loans based on business plan rather than funding and grants. But in any case, I think the bar has to be lower a bit to allow this scale up to happen more often. At least this is what I think.
Thank you, Chiara. If you don't mind going into the Jamboard and trying to capture those comments, I think they're very interesting reflections. I don't know if we have anyone here from Blue Invest, but it'd be interesting to see their perspective. Charlotte, you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we will have other workshops that will look also more into those specific aspects of financial engineering and such questions. So I mean, yeah, indeed, the discussion is not is not over, and that is something that we're paying a lot of attention to. What I wanted to ask potentially, because I know that Philipp Schwarz also is here from Interreg, and I wanted to ask if any of the projects present this morning also had some experiences with Interreg. I think it was mentioned by Sylvia regarding AfriMed, and voilà, I just wanted to ask if there was someone with something with Interreg, and I would like to share a comment on that, or otherwise maybe invite Philip if you wanted to mention something on Interreg.
In AfriMed, we are working a lot with them, particularly for the best practices and in the framework of the Decade for Ecological Restoration. Dania, cannot remember the surname, sorry, Abdullah, maybe is one of the advisory board members of AfriMed, and we are really interacting constantly with them.
Okay,
thank you.
No comment from the Interreg. So, Fantina, did you have your hand is raised?
Sorry, if I had if I could have a detail, I don't know if could be useful. In our experience, the interactions among projects deriving from personal contact with other researchers. So I don't know if the coordination could be more structured somehow at higher levels. But in some cases, the collaborations among projects derive from personal past collaboration on friendship or same research topics and so on.
Thank you. Well, I might ask Natalia in a moment to maybe give us a picture of these CSAs that are coming in the mission, which might be an opportunity to help with the synergies and linkages side of things. But Fantina, I see your hand is up first.
I just want to say that in fact we did have experience with Interreg, and we're still having experience with Interreg, in particular with Interreg Italy, Croatia in my case. And I think they're really very important programs, because I think also to address the problems, I mean, it's important also to have the support of the local stakeholders I was mentioning before, and the Interreg can help on this regard. So the only thing is that the Interreg, they're a bit more tricky, because they ask also a lot of administration, and they don't give in advance so much financial support. So you need to have already fundings to start the Interreg activities, because the pre-financement is just 10%. So it's a, you know, it's a very important tool, I think, but you need to do it together with other type of projects.
Thanks, Fantina. That's a good point. I have the same experience. So, Gonzalo, I see your hand is up.
Very short comments that I think the new work programs, it's something advanced, is that most of the definition of the topics, I'm talking more about Horizon 2020 Europe and Horizon Europe. It's the synergies between projects and activities is much more foreseen in the description of the topics, and I think every time it's more identified to which topics projects should collaborate, and also trying to go to different programs, or for example collaboration with the partnership or with the mission. So something that it's also trying to create these kind of linkages from the beginning of the topic drafting of the work program, but still room to work on it, of course.
Thank you. Natalia, from EMFF, I'm not sure if you would like to just say anything in relation to the idea of these CSAs across the sea basins and the overarching mother CSA, as DG Research calls it.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate. It's been very interesting to listen to all this. You can answer to the question, David, because PREP4Blue, this is the acronym for our proposal, which is under negotiation right now, GAP preparation, a grant agreement preparation. There's a work package totally dedicated to knowledge management, and we will try to, and this is led by Erin, by the David's team, so I think he can answer better than me. But indeed, this PREP4Blue proposal is about creating new methodologies, toolbox, helps so that projects ongoing or projects that will contribute to the mission can use new methodologies for involving stakeholders. So I take the opportunity I was going to write something on the Jamboard to answer to question 4, how can we ensure knowledge results are applied and that we meet the stakeholders' needs? So PREP4Blue is about developing new technologies that place the end users at the very beginning of the process of the research projects. Right now, end users are maybe at the end that they are supposed to uptake whatever knowledge we have produced in our research projects. The idea of the mission is to place all these stakeholders or end users at the very beginning and make them participate through the whole cycle of the research project, design, collect data, analyze the data, and take decisions about where the project should be directed so that we guarantee an uptake of this information or this knowledge, and we make sure that we are answering to their needs. So this is organized in 3 different work packages. I will not go into detail, but there's a very central work package, work package 4 about knowledge management, because this project also is about not reinventing the wheel, but taking all the results that you have produced, that the community has produced, and transfers this knowledge and these results to the right end users. And David can maybe answer to detailed questions that you could have about how we are going to accomplish this. Thank you. I hope I answered some questions.
Thanks, Natalia. So yeah, the PREP4Blue is the first CSA under the mission Oceans. It's a €5 million CSA, and there's also right now, I think, at least 3 more CSAs that we've funded in the Baltic, in the Atlantic, and in the Med, which are also supposed to help with this linkages, synergies, cohesion across the mission implementation and the lighthouses. And just Maeve, who's also here from STU, is also heavily involved in work package 4, which is a knowledge management, knowledge transfer work package, where we're looking at using artificial intelligence and semantic web to mine and cluster and aggregate knowledge, but also to do the appraisal as to whether it has potential and help to fast track knowledge, going into this idea that by 2025, there will be funding from other sources to help scale up solutions that are proven to work. So there's this vision of going from research and validation of research and solutions to scaling up and targeting and hitting the big impacts planned in the mission that Elisabetta presented earlier. So it's quite a challenge, but it's quite an interesting opportunity as well. I'm conscious of time, so what I suggest is if anyone has any more comments, if you can add them to the Jamboard. We'll leave the Jamboard open for about another half an hour after the workshop, but it would be really useful to get your thoughts and reflections. And I suppose it's really important to, again, say that this is the first workshop of 10 planned workshops. So there's a lot of opportunity to tackle this challenge of linkages, synergies, scale up from lots of different angles over the next few months, so over the next year even. And I think it's great to see SINEA leading this idea that there is a need to connect the dots across the funding programs and the system, but also to get the beneficiaries' views on the challenges they're seeing on the ground and trying to respond to this system and help that knowledge flow efficiently, understanding that, you know, proposal writing is an investment for everyone, and is, as was said, if you don't think you've got a chance of success, you need to pick your targets better. I'd like to just thank all the speakers. I think it's been great. It's helped set the scene, and like I said, it's the start. We will send you a survey after the event to get your feedback if you'd like to see better or adapted methodology, or what you'd like to see in future workshops. I think we're very open to listen to you. Alessandro, who's the lead from COGEA on this service contract, has put a link in the chat. There is a forum on the Maritime Forum where you can join and be kept up to date on the discussions and the progress of the contract. Also, I'd like to just say that there is another workshop already scheduled on the 22nd of March, and that's on blue skills. And the idea is, again, to share experiences, but also there will be a new funding call under EMFF, directly managed by SINEA, I think, on behalf of DG Mare, on blue skills, and feedback from that workshop could help inform the programming of that call. So Charlotte, I don't know if you're okay if I'll pass it back to you for the final word. Sorry, I put you on the spot there. I didn't warn you.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, David, for mentioning all this information. I mean, I wanted to check whether maybe any of the Coherence panel wanted to make a last maybe a last statement from the other programs that they are dealing with. Because it's also very important in this contract. We want also to have views from other programs on these EMFF projects that we are funding, and yeah, notably to contribute to the discussion and to the evaluation of the EMFF program and EMFF projects. So I wanted to ask if anyone wanted to say something. I don't know if people who didn't have the opportunity to talk yet. I don't know if Philip from Interreg, if you wanted to make a statement, or some other colleagues from H2020. This is the moment before we close the workshop.
Great. So yeah, I see Philip here. So Philip, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, maybe from the Interreg perspective, I mean, in preparation of this event, I have actually consulted with our Maritime Interreg community about the projects which were presented today, and just asked the Interreg community if they have in their project portfolios actually projects dealing with similar issues, and they came up with quite a number of projects. So indeed, there could be links between Interreg programs, Interreg projects, and the EMFF projects, but that is something we would need to investigate a bit on a one by one. Maybe just the point to raise is when we talk about synergies or joining forces, I mean, each funding program has also maybe a bit of a different aim. And I just have in mind the message by the LIFE colleague who said, you know, you can do a LIFE project without any cooperation. You can just do it as a single company, while in Interreg, the core is cooperation. So, I mean, also, I mean, things need to fit, and maybe also Interreg is not so much a sectoral support mechanism, which is about supporting SMEs in developing any innovative tools. It's about using cooperation actually to equal out imbalances in Europe. So I think this we need a little bit to keep in mind when we talk about synergies between programs, that each of the programs has its strength. And then I put it somewhere that we maybe need to get also over this thinking in projects. I mean, I think the question is, how could I link my project to another project is maybe the wrong approach. The right approach could maybe be to say let's say we have a problem which we need to solve, or we have a development opportunity which we want to make use of, and which funding program can now take care of which part of this problem. So it's a more an ex ante approach than afterwards sitting down, looking at my project and then trying to reach out to see, okay, where does it fit? So I think a little change of mindset and approach could also help in making really use of synergies, and not just making it so to say, a labeling or communication exercise, which is equally important, but maybe only one part of the picture.
Thank you, Philip. Good points. I'll go to Gonzalo and then Sophia.
Very short, there is just mention more to Charlotte and to you, David, that there are also other initiatives in the framework of the missions by the Commission, that they are creating a mission project portfolio and trying to see which projects are contributing to the missions and will contribute to the mission, as well as for the Green Deal. So maybe it's something for you to follow up, and this internal exercise are already running, so it will be interesting for the framework of your contract also.
Great, thank you. If you're not too camera shy, if you don't mind just turning on your cameras, one of my colleagues just wants to take a quick photo so we can throw it up on Twitter if you don't object. If you do, don't turn on your camera. And while we're doing that, Sophia, do you want to make your comments or reflection?
Thank you very much. I would like also to support what was also mentioned by Interreg Life before. It was indeed that the programs have, the different programs have different roles to play. For example, the CEF program is a program that mainly addresses member states and infrastructure development. So it's not the natural, let's say, place for business to develop. This is not, but on the other hand, if there is a possibility that this is a need, a technology is used for the reasons that we want in the CEF program, then this technology can really scale up in CEF. The idea is it's quite, that's why I mentioned from the beginning that synergies by design are the ones that they can really have an impact for these projects like ours. So actually to design from the beginning the way that you want, for example, to the trans-European networks to be. For example, you want them to be free of, or we want to support, let's say, low emissions, then we can use the chargers for the cars. That's the idea, or we can use the chargers for the vessels. So I'm saying that we need to design where we want to go so that all the instruments can be of use at the end. Thank you very much.
If I can add something from my side, I'm also part of the Coherence Panel. I'm representing AISMEA, and I deal particularly, my name is Alan, I'm sorry, my name does not appear there. I deal particularly with COSME, now with the Single Market Program. So we deal particularly with SMEs, and as you are aware, SMEs have their own requirements, very much so also. I was particularly intrigued by the presentations on underwater culture, basically, because the presentations there set me thinking also. Because Chiara, I think it was Chiara, was coming out with some very interesting information, research, practical information too, of course, from the scientific perspective mainly, and scientific research, etc., because it's channeled towards the research program which funded this particular initiative. But in my case, we deal with more with SMEs. In my case, for instance, I have a small project because COSME has much smaller grants dealing with tourism, with underwater culture for tourism purposes. And there the trust is different. The trust is not really on the scientific elements, but more on bringing underwater culture accessible for tourism purposes for the non-divers, for instance. And there I see synergies. Yes, I see the possibility of having links and also putting these type of projects together, because they have different objectives, but at the same time, they somehow seem to converge also, to come together in terms of achieving what is important. That is the understanding that under the sea, there is another world, basically, and another world which is there for discovery, in my case, for the tourism side, and for research and scientific purposes from the other side. Thanks.
Thank you. Georgios?
Hello, I'm Georgios Harlambos. I'm also coming from EMEA.
but I am a project officer in the Horizon Europe program, so it was referenced many times. Horizon Europe as the program that
the sound's not great, Georgios. I don't know if you can adjust that. It's okay, carry on, but well, maybe.
Can you hear me better now or not?
Yes, yes.
Okay, it's first of all, I would like to agree with the previous speakers that the applicants, the beneficiary, need to check the particularities of each program and which is their overarching goal when they are looking for funding opportunities. In Horizon Europe, especially, and also in H2020, that we had more projects on blue growth, so it was easier, and we had more opportunities for clustering with similar projects from EMFF. For example, we have some projects on gliders for underwater operations that can be checked. But in Horizon Europe, we focus a lot on the vessel. We focus a lot on electrification, on alternative propulsion, on alternative fuels, and similar activities that I would invite beneficiaries, SMEs, and from the market to explore the opportunities from the work program, to join forces with consortia that will compete in the forthcoming calls in these areas. And now they're coming from my side, because there was a question before about which was more beneficial, to have a bigger proposal or to work in smaller SME-driven proposals. I would say that in order to ensure this continuation of the efforts, that SMEs also capitalize their knowledge acquired from these small proposals into bigger ones, because in the Horizon Europe we have larger grant agreements in the way of 5, 6, 7, 8 million euros. But this experience can be capitalized in this wider project. And this is why I invite SMEs to check in for this, the project that were already funded in Horizon 2020 and to be funded in Horizon Europe, to check the forthcoming programs for 2023 and 2024. We have some open calls now that will close in April that could also be of interest in electrification, as I said before, alternative fuels and so on, where they could explore further funding opportunities. And without being said, I believe that there are we have a lot of things to improve. We can work closely together as far as we can understand which are the opportunities that each program can offer to the market. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, just. Fantina, I'm not sure if your hand was up from earlier or if you wanted to say something.
Sorry, it was from earlier. Sorry.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, conscious we're running a little bit over time and probably people are hungry. So like I said, we'll leave the Jamboard open for another half an hour, maybe, or even less than an hour. So feel free to go in and throw in any comments you have. And like I said, please, Coherence Panel, do feedback to us and Charlotte if you would like to focus in on something else in the next workshops. And to everyone who's participated, thank you so much for your time. I know it's first thing on Monday mornings. You're probably got to catch up with your emails now. So thank you so much for your time. And I wish you all a really nice week. And hopefully we'll see you at future workshops in the near future.
Yes. Thank you indeed, everyone. I think, I mean, the words of Philippe and other colleagues, synergies by design, this is where we are going. I mean, I think this is with the mission and the presentation by Elisabetta in the beginning, and this is clearly showing the way. So I think this is where we are going, and things will get more organized, I think, and clearer for beneficiaries and also for all of us, because we don't always know what's happening in the other program. And I think this opportunity was a good one to also hear from various programs, from various projects, and have all the colleagues together. So thanks a lot to the colleagues, to the beneficiaries from EMFF, from other programs for joining with us today and taking your whole morning with us. So thanks a lot. There will be conclusions that will be posted. There is this community on the Maritime Forum, and there is the link in the chat. So please join, and we will follow up information with you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.